Hey everybody, happy Thursday, welcome aboard. Today, friends, yes, the day before the weekend kind of starts. You're all very welcome in, and we're going to be covering some flight training. Yes, back to basics as we start exploring the Navigraph Academy right here at Microsoft Flight Sim. Naughty Gnome, your timing is exceptional. I hope you're all keeping well. You're looking well. I'm now getting the thing right. I've a cough, had the shivers and the shakes. Bring me out to the pasture and shoot me. I'm in a terrible hoop. But sure, listen, it's grand, right? We're going to be doing some Navigraph Academy today, learning what the course is all about, what we can learn, and maybe, sharpen up on some skills. Then we're going to move over and start planning our VATSIM flight for this evening, as we'll be flying out of Cincinnati, heading towards Chicago O'Hare on this Thanksgiving Day in the United States. So warm wishes to all our friends in the USA. Hope you're having a nice one. You're going to be in a hoop later on. Get the thumbs ready, loosen the belt buckle, right? But yes, it's all happening now. The postman was here this morning. I have a new mount for this camera that I look into. It's kind of mad, right? I mean, the engineering that goes on in here, lads, right? I mean, this is all mounted on an arm that goes that way, onto an arm that goes, that way. So if I shake me desk, it's like an earthquake in the place. The whole place shakes. And if I touch off it, it knocks it out of kilter. And it takes ages to get it back. So a new mount will hopefully fix that. Or it won't at all. And I'll have to blame someone else for my, purchase. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this. Navigraph Academy, it's a brand new training syllabus. It's a full course. This one, the virtual private pilot license. Now, anyone who's done real world PPL training, or maybe you've done a ground school, or maybe you're just interested in it, well, this offers something quite unique. It's aimed specifically for kind of flight simmers who want to learn or relearn, or even the experienced ones to come back. And it's been made free. There's no cost to this course whatsoever. It is compatible with Microsoft Flight Sim only for now, and their hope is to push it onto other sims. But what is interesting, right? Anyone who looked, as I said, at real world PPL training, I mean, the amount of work you have to do in terms of the theory, there's a lot of books you need to get. You're constantly learning and finding out what the best things are. You have everything to do with the aircraft, you have navigation, you have meteorology, there's tons and tons of information. There's also there's no end to it. I mean, some of the gear that I have over the years, I mean, I've all 9 volumes, or is it 8 volumes, big massive books, right? But everything from our Arc 1 flight computers, you have aircraft checklists. This is all real world stuff that I would have used, and I still use every now and again if I'm going for an L flight. That's the one that I use for my old Cessna 172. And it's cool, but this kind of stuff takes up a lot of space, right? So, for example, your various checklists. What we're finding out now, particularly as sim pilots, everything is becoming digital. And what I mean by that is, if we were to look, some of the stuff I have. Here's a book from Pooley's on RT communications. That's basically your radio telephony, how to speak and what to say. And, a lot of this is I used as kind of like the sources when we did our ATC courses, because, it's from the horse's mouth, if you like. How does one communicate? What do you say? When do you say it? But that's a little bit further on down the track, because prior to your radio telephony or your, your voice procedure, well, you have to understand the principles of flight. It's applicable to all aircraft, but, they'll start you off on something usually like a Cessna or a DA-40, all those sort of aircraft. Piper Arrows are in there as well, or even a Cherokee. I've books here on the Warrior, for which I've flown as well. And there's tons and tons of books. And then you get into some of the flying that we do, be it VF4 or IF4, and these rival bigger publications of how do you understand things and how do you read them. And there's a wealth of information in here, don't get me wrong, but Jesus, we need something tailored in order to be able to just go flying, understanding the basics, and then be able to apply those in the sim. Now, when it comes to real world flying, as I say, there's a massive amount, right? You have 45 hours minimum airtime, but then you also have ground school, you have class taking, all that sort of stuff as well. And there's also exams to take as well. And that's, then it comes to your medical, right? So there's quite a lot there. However, the advantages, of course, of our flight simulators, well, we can learn an absolute barrowload of information from a lot of sources online. We have tools, the likes of, say, Intentions, that'll kind of just, break the ice a little bit so we can start learning how to multitask, be it with communications or, understanding the traffic pattern and all this sort of stuff. And then we've other ways in which we can enhance our sim. The likes of on air, we can go full career mode. We can build up our engine hours or our flight currency as we become proficient, be it on a single engine or multi-engine aircraft. But again, it all comes back to the very beginning. I mean, understanding the principles of how to fly. A lot of folks, hopefully, will be coming into Flight Sim for the first time in December when you have the PlayStation release. So this sort of stuff, it's important because it's amazing when we do our group flights. A lot of the time, look, when we started off, excuse me, it was very, it was mad, wasn't it? I mean, there was a scene set up for every time we went to land because it was anyone's guess what was going to happen. Nowadays, it's quite different because, your skills have increased something fierce over the last couple of years, and it can be a little bit intimidating now for new folks starting off thinking, I'd love to go flying with them, but I haven't a clue what I'm doing. And, right? So that's where stuff like this starts to come in. And it's great to see what Navigraph have done here, especially that they've made it all free. You see, so they have a full course for the virtual PPL, the virtual private pilot license, and they're going to be adding more and more to this. And it's to give you kind of the basic fundamental training or knowledge, right, that you can apply to the sim in order to do the basics. And once you understand the basics, that's a very strong platform to go off and learn more, right? So it's all going to be with the small little airplanes, right? But, you can build on that and then bring it forward after that. It's very interesting to see. So today, it's all about looking at the course. What does it entail? What are we going to learn? And how do they kind of, monitor this? How do they track our progress? Because that's the important thing. If you go out for your a normal flight training, you're sitting beside your CFI. He's not telling you, but he's noting and marking down absolutely everything that you're doing. It's just like your driving test. And it's amazing. Every time you go up there, it's always going to be slightly different. I've flown the same aircraft multiple times, and every time I get into it, it feels different. Something has changed, be it from the previous pilot who used it, or the weather is slightly different, the temperature is slightly off, maybe there's a little bit more kind of moisture in the air. Everything feels a little bit different. It's familiar, but it's different. The flight training then, when it comes down to your navigation, engine management or energy management, altitude, airspace, radio procedure, voice procedure, they're all pretty much, once you learn them, it's easy to refresh on them. The biggest challenge for real world pilots, especially those on a PPL, the hardest thing to kind of, reset every time they go flying, if they aren't flying like weekly, if they fly once a month, well, a lot of the time is spent trying to reacquaint themselves with the characteristics of the airplane. Now, the good thing is they already have that foundation there. They know what to do in terms of the theory of it. It just takes a few moments to get used to the airplane itself. But for us as sim pilots, I mean, a lot of us, we fly every day. So this is a great chance to go back and look at some of the basics, be it, coordinated flight, turns, stalls, recovery, all the basic stuff that should get us out of trouble if we end up in trouble. And even regardless of any training, you're going to end up in trouble. It's just the way it happens. But that's the joy of a sim. So very much looking forward to this. Will the virtual PPL be on Xbox or PlayStation 5? I've no information on it just yet, but I imagine that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. Most of your flying is going to be done, as far as I know it will be, most of your flying is going to be done using activities built into the sim. So we're going to have a look at the full program. What does it entail? What do we do, and how do they do what they do? So it's, as I said, this is all for free. So I'd recommend everyone register because there's a ton of information. There's like a barrel load of information. And to be fair to Navigraph, they've made a lot of videos, easy to follow instructional aids and whatnot. So we're going to be following that to see what happens. And then a little bit later on, we kind of, jump into the future a bit as we plan for a complex IFR flight in an airliner using multiple airspaces with live ATC. Yeah, brilliant. Right. I mean, that's what we're up against today. But yeah, I pulled out all me. Look, the gadgets. These are I haven't used this now in a while, and it's starting to get old. And that's the problem as well. Like when you when you don't have digital solutions for real world flying, it starts becoming expensive. Because sure, you have to update things and print things, and you need a little bag to carry all your stuff. The good news is the likes of your checklists and whatnot for your aircraft, well, they're fairly straightforward. The old trusty flight computer, that's not going to change. And then depending on what avionics are on the aircraft, that can really loosen or lighten the load on the pilot. And it's funny because I'm a huge fan of a huge fan of steam gauge aircraft, the old-fashioned analog dials. I love them. But in reality, if I was flying an aircraft, give me a G1000 every day of the week, or, a G3000 or GTNs, because so much information is available to you on one screen. One dial gives you everything you need. It kind of loosens and lightens the load. But anyway, what we're going to do now in a moment, we'll get ourselves fired up. Look at the amount of books I have. Look at the thickness of that shagging thing, look. Right? And this is the stuff you'd have to bring this with you. Did you read paragraphs? I did, yeah. I didn't understand it, though. And I didn't like the way, Michelle looked at Michael. Right? It's not friggin' books we're reading. It's hardcore information. Now, in addition to all of these things, even as flight simmers, the course we have from Navigraph is very much a first in the modern flight sim world, which is free, right? Now, there's loads of, resources online of where you can fly, how you can fly. And even as I said with Say Intentions, with their pilot mentor, that mentor has been designed to assist you with what you're doing. If you have any questions, what do we do here? And you can use all of these things in real time as if the instructor was sitting beside you. Incredibly powerful training stuff, right? But if you wanted to go a little bit further, you can actually do online ground school courses, and I highly recommend these. Rod Machado, who's an absolute genius when it comes to aviation, but Rod Machado had his courses as default way back when, I think in Flight Sim X or Flight Sim 2004, and he was your CFI. He was going to teach you the basics of flight and navigation, get a little certificate at the end of it, and they also worked with the likes of the King Schools as well, Martha and John, wasn't it? And they were going to be teaching you how to fly and what everything means. But it kind of lacked something. It kind of felt robotic. It was quite linear, right? With the likes of what Navigraph are doing here, they're following you every step of the way and they're grading you, and you can go back and change things around. And it's free, which I love. I love that fact that it is free. So, the issue is it's only available to Microsoft Flight Simulator, be it 2020 or 2024, at least for now. Their hope is to get it onto other platforms. X-Plane would be the loudest one shouting in the room saying, hello, right? But at the moment, it's just available to Microsoft Flight Sim. Now, this is the sort of stuff you can take with you, even if you've no aspirations of going into real world aviation. And let's be honest, right? Unless you're looking for a career, or you're at the stage in your life whereby the hobby, especially over this neck of the woods, it's an expensive hobby. In America, even the UK, it's not as bad because, well, it's just a means of transport, especially in the United States and Canada. Aviation is just another means of transport. A lot of folks fly, they rent aircraft, or they own their own aircraft. Well, over here, it's the chosen few, you know what I mean? And usually of a particular age group, they have the money to do it, because it is expensive. I mean, even the most basic aircraft, you're talking maybe 200 to 300 euros per hour wet. Maybe there's another €100 per hour dry. Then you have insurance, you have hangar fees, you have maintenance fees, and then you have to keep your own currency up to keep your license active from your PPL. So there's huge costs to the real world side of it. If you're going in for a career, well, it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, they're going to deliver all the training, all the courses, which you can do, but that's also expensive. I mean, if you wanted to go into the world of real aviation today, and you wanted to go for airliners, cadetships, yeah, 1 in a million. Consider yourself lucky if you got one. Certainly if you go the route of the military, you have a better chance because you will get all your flight training completed, but then you're tied into a contract. If you leave within X amount of years, you have to buy yourself out. Now, historically, a lot of airliners did that. They would approach, especially in Ireland, they would approach the Air Corps pilots and say, hey, come on, come fly with us. And they'd buy them they'd buy their commission effectively. But, if Joe Bloggs I want to fly 737s or A320s, from zero to hero, it's going to cost you in the region of about €90,000, roughly. And that's your course material, your training. Like, it's expensive. However, as I said, in different countries, there's grants available, there's training courses available, there's a lot of other options. But all of that to one side, as flight simmers, how can something like this benefit us? Well, when it comes to aviation, and aviation is more than just, flying around the place, I think people are all drawn to aviation for a number of reasons, but I think one thing we all share, we're just mesmerised by it. We want to know more about it. It's quite intriguing. We're like, well, how does that work? And we can see that when it comes to the complex airliners, we can see it from the rotary wing, when it comes to helicopter flying, and even your general fixed wing or even military aircraft. We want to learn more. We're quite inquisitive, and that's something that we all share as flight simmers. So a course like this, well, we're looking at it going, maybe I'm not flying per the book or as I should be, or maybe I can build some confidence here if I am going to fly online or if I'm going to do a group flight, or even if I just want to fly the aircraft more proficiently. Well, that's what this course is all aimed at. So, we'll see what the story is and give it a blast, sure. Right, what's the worst that could happen? I heard you say. But we'll see what happens, right? So before we get started, we'll ramble into the chat. As we say hello and happy Thanksgiving, good morning. From a 13 degrees Tipperary in Ireland. It's very mild, right? We don't know why. But that's... we'll see what we can do. Right, who's here? Look, Malky, very good morning to you. Toto is in the house. Good morning. Ryan is here. The Impossible Face. Tis fierce smiled, buddy. Big Business, welcome aboard. DK Funfly is here. Work lurking mode ish. Would you like to know more? Max Stallion is here. 98 Vulcan, top of the morning to you. Super P Potato. Welcome in, man. Now, let me see. Max Stallion, Jesus, 270 streams in a row. Did you just see what he did? 270. He says, at this stage, I'm more consistent than Robin Podge's biscuits. Are you making the tea? Max Stallion, thank you very much indeed. PK Troy, a very good afternoon to you. Hope you're well. Spitfire RAF 100 is here in the chat. Welcome in. Patrick Doyle, good to see you, buddy. Naughty Gnome, good morning to you, my guy. Hope you're well. And lads, if you've any questions as well about, the sim, your any flight sim, be it X-Plane or Microsoft Flight Sim, hardware, maybe if software issues, our daytime streams, this is the place. So if you have any questions, do let me know. Corn Wolf is here, top of the morning. Filthy is here. Happy Thanksgiving Day to the United States. It's good to see you, buddy. New AirAC is coming out today as well. Yes, there is new nav data available, so we better grab that. Naughty Gnome then jumped on with gifting 5 tier 1 subs to the community. Naughty, thank you very, very much indeed. Lads, if you got a tier 1 sub, with thanks to Naughty Gnome, do be sure to say thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. APU Inspector, welcome in. Sean Dale is here. Hope you're well. Vacuum is in the house. Let me see here now. Good morning to you, buddy. Jimbo Stream, hope all is well. Willow, how much? Welcome in. Soaring AJ, 80 streams in a row, buddy. Thank you very much indeed. Hope all is well in Florida. It's very good so far, says Naughty Gnome. Very well done. Indeed, indeed. Dazza T. Arab. Well, hello, Dazza. You're looking well. Is that a new clone? What do? Do you fill the bath and then jump in? We can smell it from here. It's good to see you, buddy. David Bay is here. Malky, good. He says, Murph knows what a checklist is. Yeah, but it'll stay in the drawer, yes. Doug D, good to see you, Doug. Thank you very much indeed for 8 months subscribed. Cheers, buddy. Hope you're well. Big Walter is here. You're very welcome aboard. Now it's only Murph who ends up rolling into car parks. Well, yes, that's happened. Listen, you do something stupid once and you're remembered for it. Gar Gaming, hope you're well. A big hello to Galway. Very good morning to you. Sean Dale, indeed. Abdul is here. Oz Nomad, he says it requires Symlink. I'm not sure if you can install that on Xbox. Well, you do have Navigraph charts working with Xbox, so I think it will work. We'll read the FAQ here now in a moment. Mutley, good morning. Hope you're well. Airlock Doc, happy birthday, Airlock. Morning, Murph. Murph is training. I'm unboxing rudder pedals. What a combo. Hope you're well. It's younger looking you're getting. Where is this now? It looks like Murph's been to the library this morning. Right, I'm banned from the library, Sean Dale says, I explained to my instructor that I had many hours following Murph. He kicked me out of the plane, cancelled my test. He did look really white when I left. Yeah. Don't follow me. Hermit something, good to see you. I remember a time when I dreaded getting to class by 8 o'clock, trying to get to school here at 0600. Glad classes here are engaging. Good morning, Mr. Murphy and everyone here. Hermit something, a very good morning to those in Boston, and hope you have a great day, buddy. There's buttons here, lads. Let's have a look. Medical stops me, alas, but stuff like this is nice for keeping me brain sharp, says the impossible face. Yeah, and that's a huge thing, right? As flight simmers, I mean, look we have the advantage of, we don't need to worry about a lot of logistics if we want to go flying. Real world weather doesn't really have an impact on us, and the availability of an aircraft really doesn't impact us either. There are so many pros to flight simming. You can use it in addition to your real world flying as well. I mean, there's just so many pros to flight simming, and the flight sim over the last 5 years, it has become so accessible. And so popular now, which is great to see. And like the whole industry, the whole flight simulation genre, it's exploding, which is great to see. I mean, look at all the hardware we have. Look at all the aircraft add-ons. Look at the platforms now. I mean, X-Plane, they were one of the first ones to have X-Plane Mobile. Then we had Microsoft Flight Sim on Xbox. Now they're pushing it onto PlayStation. We have a lot of good options here, considering how sophisticated these simulators are. You know what I mean? Apache, good to see you, buddy. Mac Vision is here. Welcome aboard. Northern Aviation, 9 months. My dude, top of the morning. Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed. Mwendo the Cheetah, Meowdy, from an 18-degree New Zealand. 18 degrees in New Zealand. Jeez, that's balmy. Hope you're well, buddy. Kia ora. Pieman Jim is here. Good to see you, Jim. Greetings from Newcastle. The tune is a bit damp today. Yeah, I don't know. It's cloudy here. It was raining earlier, but no, I think we'll be all right. But yes, Chalks is here. Good to see you, Chalks. Dad Game Time is here. Jay Brown, welcome in. Hope you're well also, my friend. Bell Bro is in the house. Navigraph Academy seems nicely structured and well explained subjects. We'll be diving through it now. Naughty Gnome says, questions on my setup. How do I convince Mrs. Gnome to let me build the extension so I can fit me sim or more sim gear into me office? Do you know, I was only having that conversation with Mrs. Two-Tone yesterday as I'm looking around my man cave, right? I'm very limited on space here. You can't really see it. If I turn on this camera, you might. Right? Don't focus on the back of my head. But I'm kind of limited because I do have a Doff Reality rig sitting over behind me camera here in the light, right? And I don't have much room. And I was thinking, do you know, I could nearly take over another room for a different rig altogether, maybe VR or something. That conversation ended abruptly. So yes, Naughty, I don't know how we do this, you know, for science, right? For the well-being of yourself and the nation. Try that one as well. Light Bison, good to see you. Iceman is here. Welcome aboard. Hope you're well, buddy. Naughty Gnome, thank you very much indeed. Gifting a tier 1 sub to Iceman. Cheers, buddy. Flight Sim Mods, Shane, good morning. Where's this now? You had me at Flight Sim. Ooh, behave. Welcome in, buddy. Where's this now? Why did Weetabix stop using paper wrappers? You have to buy the Tesco version, otherwise they're rubbish. Really? They don't use paper wrappers? Egg Barley, expand into the kitchen, Murph. Right, yeah, right. We'll try it. Idle Cutoff is here. Cambridge calling. Hello from Tipperary. Jesus. There's buttons over there in the corner. Doc Nader, good morning. Dazza says, offer a new kitchen. I don't, lads, listen. The kitchen's currently being painted. Super Pea Potato, you can wash dishes whilst using VR. Yes. Flowers and chocolates may help. Well, that's the sign. But that's the warming up part of the mission. Do you know what I mean? Spitfire. But yes, sound advice. Did it end abruptly with a frying pan? Metaphorically speaking, it did. Yes. Where is this now? It's just as well I live by myself. If my setup gets any bigger, it might spill into the kitchen, says the impossible face. You see? Now let me see. Just Roy. Froy, thank you very much indeed. 5 gifted tier 1 subs into the community. The man is a legend. Thank you very, very much indeed. Insane generosity. Cheers, buddy. Pringles, good to see you. A spa day does the trick. That could mean many things in Ireland. But yes, she's not mad going to the spa. You know, who else is here? Uniform Goose, top of the morning. Good to see you, Goose. Matt Roberts is here. Good morning. Marcel, a very good morning to you. El Papino, bonjour, monsieur. Hope all is well. Stone is in the house. Good to see you. Hope all is well. Kubi Montana, top of the morning. Kojo Plays, welcome in. He says, I haven't played Microsoft Flight Sim since the first week the game came out, so hopefully this will make you play it again. Oh, dude, it's so good. And like we're so close now to the latest update, Sim Update 4. And like everyone who's using it is saying it's very good, you know. Says Sim, good to see you, buddy. Hope all is well. It's 6 degrees in France. Ooh, 6 degrees. A Crotty is here. Good morning. You have a man cave, but you need a man extension. Yeah. Wait, what? Right, let's get into this and see what happens before we get in trouble, will we? Right, so you're very welcome in. I'll move my microphone. It might make a sound. Oh, it didn't. Oh, but we're doing great things here, right? It was 25 degrees during the day. Wendo, what part of the parish are you in? Are you up the north or are you down the south? Because doesn't the south get a little bit warmer? I think, maybe. I don't know. I think it does. I could be wrong though. Right. Also, I'm going over your neck of the woods in March. We're going over. Are you in the North Island? Ooh, nice. Yeah, I'm heading to Southland next year. Looking forward to it. Going to Warbirds over Wanaka. Can't wait. I will miss the squeak, says Corn Wolf. Hang on. I'll fix this. No, it doesn't. Sometimes my genius can fix squeaking. Right. This must be Sim Update 3. It is. It absolutely is. Oh, you were there in 2008. Oh, nice. 13 here at the moment. Any warmer, I have to break my shorts out. Oh, Jesus. Right. Let's have a look at this anyway. What is Navigraph Academy? Well, here it is here, look. Simulated flight, real training. Dreaming of flying like a real pilot? Well, Navigraph Academy gives you the real-world training path to get there for free. From your first throttle push to mastery of flight. Ooh. So what we have, you log on to academy.navigraph.com and you set yourself up, you register the whole lot, everything's free, and you'll find yourself kind of at this landing page. And up the top left-hand side, we've home, get started, the course catalogue, your flights, exams, and then resources. All right. So it's broken down into a PPL, and for your private pilot license, as I said, like versus the real world, there's an awful lot in there. It covers an awful lot, as you could have imagined. What Navigraph have done here, they've made it very relevant to flight simmers, but they are following the real world structure. Right. So what we have here, there's a couple of resources we can grab that Navigraph have prepared for us, including checklists for the good old Cessna 172. They also have some control binding guides for different hardware. Turtle Beach are in there, Honeycomb, and also your Xbox controller. So there's a lot of guides here for them to help you. These are the controls we want you to set up, and so on. And then we have the user guide. So if we were to look at the Cessna user guide, it's a PDF. You can download it, put it on a tablet or whatever. So this is intended to be used with the Navigraph Academy. And just like your POH for the aircraft, and when you start out your flight training, well, they're going to start teaching you the basics, understanding what the different parts of the airplane are, what they do, and how they work. So, for example, yes, we know at the front of the aircraft, we have our engine and propeller. At the rear of the aircraft, you have your tail, but people will say, you know, horizontal stabilizer, elevator, rudder, right? So it's just pointing to what everything is. And this is basic stuff, right? But again, when you look through it, you might, oh, that's what they call it, right? But anyway, they go through the user guide for the aircraft, and it's basically setting up camera views, getting your controls, operating limits of the aircraft, and then the procedures. And then they talk about getting the, getting the right visuals in there, because your seating position, so much so, if you ever look on airliners, you'll see in the center console up high, usually on the bar that comes down, but there's these three little dots, little circles. They're visual guides or guidance for the pilot and co-pilot, so that they're sat in a correct position, so that they can see all the instruments without exerting massive movement. That's how important it is. Your seating position in the real world, it's also very important when it comes to the sim, right? Your viewpoint in the aircraft, but also where you're sitting, what's at your desk. Maybe you're on the couch with a controller, or maybe you're sat in a rig. It's very important getting the correct seating position, the field of view, and making sure that you can see your instruments and also outside. Very important. And it's basic stuff, but you'd be amazed. People are like, oh, I don't know where that, it's right there in front of you. right? So they go through some of the options here of how to set up all your different views. There's advice here on quick views to look at certain instruments. That's entirely up to you. I think we're all at the stage, we're all at the stage where, you click a button, it's going to bring you back to the view that you want. There is one thing that I do on any simulator, depending on your hardware, but if it's a yoke, there's usually a button. If it's a joystick, it's the trigger. I always set the trigger to load my custom view, which is my basic standard view. It just means if anything were to happen, if I'm looking out the window or if I'm outside, an instant click of that button and it's close by, it puts me straight back into the cockpit view of pilot flying, right? So I recommend having something like that set up, because at any moment you can just, boom, click of a button, you're back looking exactly where you are. Now, if you're using the likes of head trackers or eye trackers, it's kind of null and void, because you can just move your head. But certainly if you can't move your head, or even on the Xbox, have a keybind set up that it'll load your custom view, or whatever view that is, right? Now, other things, buttons for setting your flaps, that's important. Your elevator your elevator access, ailerons, rudder. Then it comes to your throttle, your prop and mixture. Prop, not important for the Cessna 172. Mixture is, right? Your toe brakes, or some way of controlling ground handling, be it toe brakes and yaw axes and all that. So you can see what they're doing. They're going through all of the bits and bobs, and they're even showing you their suggested control axis curves. The control curves. Basically what it means is, when you null out the control curves, usually they're like bottom left to top right in a straight line diagonally, yeah? So when you do move your flight controls, well, it reacts straight away. What Navigraph are suggesting here is, no, put a bit of a curve on it. And the reason being is, where the dot is in the middle, that's where your control is centered. And because now, instead of a straight line, it just means that you can exert a little bit more force on your controls, and the aircraft won't respond quickly or too quickly, because sometimes you're constantly trying to hold the adjustment and keep things right. This will make things easier. Never in an airplane, like unless you're doing like air show stuff or military stuff, or you're in a spot of bother, you would never have to fully deflect left or right, up or down. 95% of your time in the airplane, you're operating within about 20 degrees, 25 degrees, right? Could be slightly higher, but like, you'll never use full deflection. So if you use something like this curve, it's giving it a lot more freedom to exert more force and more accurate movement on your controls. And then if you do need to go full deflection, well, you can see where it speeds up, and it'll give you the full deflection, the full movement of that control surface. Something to consider. Have a look at it and see how your flying goes. If you're struggling right now in the sim, the controls are too sensitive, I can never get the accuracy, well, level out. Create something like this that you can see with your control axes. And I'll show you in the sim how to do that. This will allow you far more control over the aircraft. It just does. If that line is a dead straight line, depending on your hardware, it becomes twitchy, and it's very hard to kind of keep it in the straight and narrow. So something like this, that'll help. Same with your rudders, elevator, ailerons, the whole shebang. All right. Now, other things they talk about, dead zones as well, if you want. So that means you can kind of rest your hands or your feet on your controls without worrying that the airplane is going to start doing something. You can introduce what's called a dead zone. Basically, it's like a certain movement of your controls. Well, they'll do nothing. They're dead, right? That can be handy for a lot of people as well. So something to keep an eye on. Now, the virtual operating handbook, they're talking about the Cessna. Now, the Cessna 172, most produced airplane in the world, I believe. But there are many variants of a Cessna 172. You have Cessnas from the 70s, for example. You have T, an F, an S, an I. There's loads of different ones. The avionics are different. Fuel tends to be roughly the same, but you could have carb heat in there. There's loads of different options. But generally, this is your normal kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. Your Cessna 172, it's a very strong workhorse of an airplane, particularly when it comes to flight training. And it's a great cruiser for getting around as well. They then go off and they explain some of the airspeed terminology. So you have KCAS, which is your knots calibrated. KIAS, well, IAS, we know about that, indicated, right? Then you have TAS, which is your true airspeed. Then we have our V speeds. We've looked at these before. So your V speeds would be maneuvering, stall, never exceed, all that kind of stuff. Operating limitations are going to tell you roughly the speeds of the aircraft and what it can and what it can't do. A lot of this at this stage, this is nice to know. You have could, should, and must. Could, should, and must. So we'll try and focus on that sort of theory of what we need to know. All right. Normal procedures. Now, when they say normal procedures, that's based on kind of general weather, general weight and balance, and all the jazz. 55 knots, give or take, indicated. That's when you rotate. That's when you take off. Your normal climb at about 75 knots. You could argue at 74. There's a lot of things like this. And then your obstacle avoidance or climb, VX, you can climb at 65 knots. Climb performance is all there. En route performance, that's all for fuel planning. And all the jazz is there. Then we have our detailed procedures. It's a very interesting kind of checklist that's there. And it does mirror that of the real world, a real world Cessna 172 checklist. So if I were to say, right, startup, in-flight, emergencies, limitations. If I were to look at limitations, I would say maximum weight for takeoff, grand. If I were to say velocity to never exceed, well, it's in knots and miles per hour in the real world stuff. But you'll find that they're all fairly bang on. And again, they're going to say, look, this is based on the Cessna 172. A lot of the time they might give you specific model numbers, or they'll give you years of manufacture and all this stuff. All right. So great. You get a 172 guide here, and I'm sure they're going to build this. Then you have all the control bindings, right? So optimize your hardware for realistic handling. So for example, if you wanted to look at the Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo, which is very popular, very, very popular bit of kit. What they're going to show you, look, reset your cockpit view. That's that button I'm telling you about. You can either reset it or load a custom view. I use it to load a custom view, right? But then you'll see different views that are, toggle instrument 1, toggle instrument 6. That's up to the user with all the different views and how you move things around. These are just suggestions from Navigraph and how you set things up. But if you follow what they're doing, it'll explain to you, well, what they do and how they do it, right? So good resources there, handy to have. So that's the resources. If we go to home, we can go in now and have a look. And there's a couple of videos we'll play on this. You'll see, explore the courses. You have the virtual PPL, that's now released. Then the next module coming down the line is going to be instrument flying. And then they get into instrument approaches. And it goes on and on and on from there. I mean, there's a barrel load of stuff here. Then you have to learn about the weather. You have to learn about, forces on the humans and all. There's a lot of stuff that you learn, right? But Navigraph Academy, it's built for newcomers with little to no flight sim experience, but it's also built for experienced simmers as well. And it's all put together by real world pilots, real world flying instructors, right? Sandman, good to see you. So what we have, as we kind of scroll down here, you'll see there's tons of articles in which we can read about, but we also have like the introductory video. So we'll fire this up and have a quick look. And as I said, you get the idea what this is all about. Do you know what I mean? So we'll watch this and see what happens.
You have arrived. Welcome to Navigraph Academy. Here, you'll experience the thrill of mastering the art of flying and earn the right to call yourself a certified virtual pilot. No matter your experience level or your current knowledge of flight simulators, be safe with the knowledge that will get you airborne and flying in no time. Along the way, you'll make use of Navigraph's completely new learning systems, helping you sharpen your skills and become as good as real-life pilots at maneuvering, performing landings, and finding exciting places to go visit. This course is for you, and it's all free. Strap in and get on board, and let's go flying together.
So a nice little introduction to what it is, but we're going to dive a lot deeper into all of this, right? So the courses we're looking at, it's the virtual PPL. This is the first one that we're going to look at. Now, in that, we have 14 ground school lessons, we have 14 flying lessons, and we have 2 exams. Just quite a bit. So we have an introduction to all of this. We'll have a look at that at the moment. But I want to show you there are 2 phases to the virtual PPL that Navigraph have done. Phase 1 is 0 to solo. So absolute beginner up to your first solo flight. And then phase 2 is visual navigation. This is your ground operations, local navigation, cross country, and then solo cross country. And again, this is following kind of real world procedures. If we look at some of the lessons here in phase 1, introduction and aircraft familiarization, effects of the controls, right? Level flight and turns, climbs and descents, stalls and dive to max speed, slow flight and the use of flaps, takeoff, landing, traffic pattern, and your first solo. These are the absolute basics. Every time you go flying, you'll have a takeoff, you'll have a landing, hopefully, and you'll probably do pattern work. Pattern work, the traffic pattern in the United States, they would circuits, or is it over here we call them circuits? Basic circuits. Circuits or traffic patterns, they are both the same thing, all right? And there's rules and regulations in which you have to follow. There's dedicated or assigned altitudes. There's a assigned direction, right? What way you fly around the airport. They're almost like they're invisible waypoints along where you fly. And because we don't have any like road signs up there, turn left in 200 meters, well, this is the stuff we need to follow. All right. Mark Eamon, good to see you. Dying with man flu today. You poor old Divleen, Mark. Pfeiffer, welcome aboard. Hope you're well. So we're going to start off at the very beginning, but we do have an introduction video here we're going to look at. And like everything, these are basic stuff, but you will learn something on it. I guarantee you, even a real world pilot, you'll come back to this and go, oh yeah, it's very good. When it comes to learning new things in flight simulation and the world of flight simulation, which includes not just the aviation, but of course the world, the science behind it, tourism, all of that, you learn something new all the time, right? So we'll have a look here at this video. It's about 3 minutes long, and there's quite a lot of videos in this, but the idea is it's to give you information. All right. Alson, thank you very much indeed. You're very kind for 11 months. Cheers, buddy. Right, we'll do one of these, and let me see. I have a page open here. If you're on the vertical stream watching, just the top page is not really doing anything, but the bottom page is the video that we're going to look at. So we'll fire this one up and let's see what happens.
To train with Navigraph Academy, you will make use of several tools. This video will teach you 2 things. First, how to install and use our tools, which will assist your journey towards the skies. Second, we'll look at how to start the lessons, how we fly them, and how we get feedback after the flight. Let's get started. First, make sure you have created a free Navigraph account on the Navigraph Academy website. Then, you should install 2 software programs. The first is called Navigraph Hub. It is available by going here and clicking here. Navigraph Hub adds lesson files automatically into the correct folders for you by simply clicking this button and waiting for confirmation. The second software is called SimLink. The download for this is also available from the same place as Navigraph Hub. SimLink sits in the background and registers your flying activity inside the simulator, allowing us to score and provide feedback on your flying lessons. Remember to log into SimLink with the same user account as you created earlier. Okay, you're all set up. Now let us start flight training. Using the Navigraph Academy systems is easy. Every lesson starts with a theoretical training on the website. Go to the lesson you want to do and read and watch. Once you feel confident to try the lesson inside the simulator, go through the pre-flight briefing on the website, accessible through the lessons. Then launch your flight simulator. Go to Activities and Custom Content. Click on the lesson you want to play. A pre-flight briefing gives you a few final reminders on what to do. Now it is possible to launch the lesson, and it's time to fly. Have fun. Practice for as long as you like. Once you are done, end the flight. Go back to the website. Within a few minutes, you will be able to find your flight statistics. On this debriefing page here, you can see how well you did on all your lessons' specific maneuvers. You are given feedback on how well each attempt succeeded, and get suggestions on how to improve in the future. If you do not get a passing score, you can try the lesson again. To pass your course, you need to complete all lessons with passing scores. You must also pass examinations that are given at the end of each phase, unlocked, after you have completed all of your flying lessons. Flying with Navigraph Academy is easy and realistic. Let's go explore the wonderful world of flight training together. We'll see you up there.
Right, so it's fairly straightforward, right? It's the activities are saved in the sim directly, which is what you want. Why isn't this working now? I have buttons here that don't work. It's saved in the sim directly under activities, and that's where you access them all from. Right. Heisenberg, good morning. Turkey's in the oven. That's what we want to hear. So the first part of this is introduction and aircraft familiarization. Welcome aboard. In the first lesson, you'll get to know your instructors, explore the course structure, and familiarize yourself with the basic controls. All right. So you click in on the lesson, and this one here, they're going to tell you all about it. In this first lesson, we'll begin your journey into the world of virtual flight training. We'll introduce you to the realism, the tools, and the unique features that make the virtual private pilot license course with Navigraph Academy so special. You'll also meet the instructors, and it's good to learn about all this as well, right? So, Murph, must like Jazz with the YouTube recommendation. You wouldn't know, lads, you wouldn't know. Right, is that working out the way it should be? No, it's not. Hang on, my screen is turned off over here. Nothing like, live performances. Hang on, we turn this gadget on. And press some buttons. So there's another video coming in which we'll watch. Introduction and aircraft familiarization, and that's what we have in all of these options. We can go in and learn about each and every course we're going to do. Now, before we watch the video, we can read up on the sim setup, right? 2020 setup, 2024 setup, right? So depending on what sim you're using. Also, then we can learn about what are the requirements of passing this tutorial. All right, Adam, good to see you, buddy. Purely Microsoft Flight Simulator for now. Just Microsoft Flight Simulator. They are hoping to get this onto X-Plane in the future, but at the moment it's just for Microsoft Flight Simulator. All right. So if we have a look in here at this video, we'll have a listen to the lads, because it's to give an idea of what they're kind of all about. Do you know what I mean? So we'll have a look and see what happens here.
Welcome to Navigraph Academy and the Virtual Private Pilot's License course. This course is designed to enable anyone to learn to fly in our most modern flight simulators. Maybe you felt overwhelmed by complicated setups and vast amount of different aircraft types and realism settings. Perhaps you're struggling to understand how to maintain altitude or navigate your way around the world or take off and land. Or perhaps you've enjoyed flight simulators for some time, but you want to sharpen your flying skills to match real-world flying standards. This course is as real as it gets. We're confident we have created something uniquely realistic. We will make use of real flight training methods and focused on what's important, such as attitude flying and pitch and power techniques, just like you would in real life. We're even replicating the timeline of a customary flight training course. Briefings, guided flight sessions, and flight analytics will make sure you'll get the maximum training value at all times. The course is made up of a number of lessons, and each lesson will teach you a core flying skill. A core flying skill is a specific maneuver or flight procedure that you can master to perfection, such as turns or visual navigation. In this first course, you're going to master these fundamental flying skills, which is a great base for learning to fly any plane, be it an airliner or a small general aviation aircraft, in any simulator. The end goal of this course is to attain the skill set required to attain your very own.
There's buttons being pressed. Doug, you absolute mad thing. Between Cracker redeeming stuff and then Doug, 10 gifted tier 1 subs this morning. Thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you very much. You're very kind, lads. If you got a tier 1 sub, but thanks to Doug, well, do be sure to say thank you. We're here learning all about Navigraph Academy and watching some other videos. The introduction to the first lesson we're going to do. We can do it all together. That's a good thing. But yeah, Adam, I agree. It is a shame that we can't do this yet on X-Plane, but we will eventually, right? I mean, it is something they would like to do. But, I mean, you can still use Navigraph Academy. If you're on X-Plane, you're just going to be missing out on the feedback. But in terms of learning the theory side of it, you can, right? And P3D, yeah, and P3D. Well, I don't know, like P3D, it's kind of, it's I won't say it's now being ignored, but it's kind of being ignored now. Like, you talk to any developer, like, hey, you doing that for P3D? Go back a couple of years ago and, like, you'd be counting them all day. you're down to like a handful of developers who are still doing stuff on P3D. It's just the way things are moving, I suppose. But I would agree. I would love to see this on all flight simulation, all of them, do you know? But at the moment, it's very much aimed at Microsoft Flight Sim, do you know? Mrs. TPHI is upside down saying good morning. Hope you're well, Mrs. Hope you're well. So we'll continue on and see where they're going with this.
VPPL, a virtual private pilot's license. We will use the iconic Cessna 172, one of the greatest training aircraft ever produced. For this course, we're going to use Microsoft Flight Simulator as our simulator. In it, you'll find the Cessna 172 fitted with the G1000 avionics suite, which is available in all game release versions. This means you can jump straight into your flight training with us. We've gathered an amazing team with a ton of aviation teaching experience to guide you on your flight training journey. We're in for a great ride together. And before we begin, I'd like to share a bit about my background. I bring 3 decades of experience in aviation safety and training, with extensive expertise in transport category aircraft and a broad range of general aviation experience. I will serve as your flight instructor, teaching you the practical aspects of flying, including aircraft maneuvering and operation. Joining me, I have great aviators to help. Martin is our ground instructor, and he'll be giving you the meat of the course. Martin is a former airline captain and a long-time certified flight instructor. Having written several books that are used in private pilot training in Europe, he's a perfect match to teach you the science behind everything we're going to do.
I will be teaching you and helping you to prepare for your flight lessons throughout the course. And in this role, I will cover the theory behind flight, hopefully giving you all the amazing insights into the aerodynamics of the flight maneuvers that you will get to fly. I will also be explaining the procedures, the aircraft technical systems, and a lot more. And whereas Jason is more focused on the practice of flying, I will be here to tell you all about the interesting theoretical knowledge behind it all.
Andy will be your guiding voice on all matters related to flight simulators. Andy has been flight simming for many years and knows a lot about how to achieve amazing virtual flying experiences. He is also a trained commercial pilot and former airline pilot, so he knows a thing or two about the realism of modern flight simulators.
I'm here to help ensure that you, as a student, have a positive learning experience. We all know that getting started can be a daunting task, and in my role as a community manager at Navigraph, I hope to alleviate many of the difficulties by guiding your flight training journey, such as configuring your flight controls and selecting the best simulator settings. I also join in at times to discuss real-life aviation ties and trivia that relate to your flight training sessions. For example, there are plenty of lessons to be learned from real-life incidents and accidents and how they have shaped why we fly the way we do today. Finally, it's important to address both the differences and similarities between virtual flight training and real-life flight training. There are some key differences, but you'll probably also be surprised at the level of realism that is achievable with today's simulators.
Your journey starts at our training website, where you can access our in-game training sessions. All of our content and our missions is 100% free, but if you're not quite ready to start training yourself, feel free to continue watching our videos here. You'll experience all the training and theory that is included in our courses.
See you at the Academy and in the airplane. Don't forget to subscribe and to leave a comment. This way you will not miss our future training videos and you will be supporting our educational content here on YouTube. See you up there.
Right, pretty cool. So a nice introduction into what it's all about. And again, you know, you have access to this material even if the material isn't available on your preferred platform, at least for now, right? So it's a good startup. So we'll move on to your simulator setup, right? We've met the instructors, we know what it's all about. Well, now we want to get our simulator set up, and that's anything from your in-game settings or in-sim settings, also to your control bindings as well. Now, they go through a 2020 setup, and they also go through a 2024 setup. Now, this is a 25-minute video. We're not going to watch it all, but I'll jump ahead just to give you an idea of the material in which they're covering, just to give you, you know, what they're looking for in terms of what way they want you to have some sort of a setup on your own flight sim yourself. So we'll have a quick look at the 2024 setup just to give you an idea, and I'll kind of move through this because there's different things like your control axes and button binds and all the jazz. So we'll have a quick look at this to get an idea.
Hi everyone, it is time to set up your simulator so that you can get the most out of the Navigraph Academy training courses. I'll be giving you instructions and advice on not only how to configure the controls on your devices, but also what realism settings you should turn on and off to achieve the best training results. These settings shown in this video can be used in MSFS 2024. If you're using MSFS 2020, head over to the video that pops up right here or follow the link in the description. Let's begin with the control settings. So at Navigraph Academy, we've been careful to pick out the right control bindings to ensure not only the most realistic, but also the most effortless flight training experience within the sim. And on top of that, we have also selected the best viewing options for the cockpit camera views to ensure that you can fly following the real-life visual pitch attitudes, while also having access to instruments, aircraft systems, and outside views. First of all, Navigraph Academy is designed to be used with any type of sim setup, be it a large home cockpit like this, or just a basic setup with a simple hand controller like this. The only requirement is that you use some sort of control device, often referred to as a peripheral, where a handheld controller device such as an Xbox controller can be seen as a minimum requirement. I won't suggest exact buttons to map on each of the different controllers here, but on the Academy website you'll find examples on control mappings for the most common peripherals on the market. You can also use this video as a reference for which keybinds are essential and then bind these to the buttons of your choice. Just follow along inside the sim and update your settings as we proceed. Also,
okay, so if we move along, control axes, these are important, lads, right? And the reason why control axes are important, when it comes to your capability or what the plane is doing based on your inputs, a lot of people can get caught out. They get, hey, it's so finicky or it's so sensitive. Well, this is where your control axes really help, because you can set the axes in the sim, be it in 2020 or 2024. So have a quick look at this.
Operations. Let's begin by setting up some axes. You can access the control setup menu from here. First off, let's bind our elevator, aileron, and rudder axis. These controls will...
So 777 asking, Murph, do you need to have an active subscription to Navigraph? No, this is completely free. All the resources that you see, this is completely free. There's no, you don't need to be subscribed to Navigraph. You don't need an active subscription. It's all free.
Will allow pitch, roll, and yaw control. First, find the elevator axis setting and bind this to the pitch control axis on your control device, such as the forward-aft movement on a joystick, yoke, or the thumbstick on a controller. Then find the aileron axis and bind this to the roll axis, such as the left-right movement on a joystick, a yoke, or on a thumbstick. The last of the three primary control axes is the rudder axis setting, and this is the trickiest one to cover.
Okay, so rudder pedals, right? Not everyone uses a rudder pedal, so they can use a twist on their joystick, right? Or you can use buttons on an Xbox controller or whatever. There are also options in the sim, in the assistance area, where you can have what's called auto rudder. So basically, this helps you for doing things like coordinated flight. Doing a coordinated turn Doing a coordinated turn in flight sim can be difficult because you're not actually feeling the forces of the aircraft. Everything has to be measured by what you see. Now, you can look at your turn and your slip coordinator. That's an instrument on the aircraft dashboard that you can say, look, that's what I'm doing. Or, after time, when you get used to it, you'll know if the airplane is coordinated when it's turning, right? It's not just move your ailerons left or right. You need to do what's called a coordinated turn. And that's real world training as well. If you don't have access to rudder pedals or a twist on a joystick, you can turn this onto automatic, and the sim does a pretty good job with the auto rudder. It does nice kind of fine inputs on the rudder. So if it's something that you want to just skip, you can come back to it later, or indeed if you just want an extra bit of help, you can use auto rudder. I tend to leave it off because throw us in at the deep end, that's where I'll learn, but these are the options you can do. Other axes then come to your prop, your throttle, and your mixture. Mixture is going to be covered way later on in a different lesson, but you get the idea. Also, your ground handling or your braking. So in a lot of aircraft, you have what's called differential braking. Basically, your two pedals, left pedal is for your left brakes, right pedal is for your right brakes. And you can actually steer the aircraft, depending on the aircraft. You'll either have a nose steering wheel, as in that wheel will move with your rudder pedals, right? Or some aircraft have what's called a caster wheel, meaning that it's like the caster on a couch. There's no motor that'll physically turn it in a certain direction. Inertia changes the direction of the airplane. So if you're moving forward at like walking speed and you apply a small bit of braking to your left wheel, well, the left wheel will slow down. Your right wheel is still moving at speed. What happens? Well, the aircraft will start to turn on the ground because the right side is moving faster than the left side. And you can reverse that if you want to go to the right. So you have axes for your brakes if you want to throw them in there as well. Some of the keybinds are important, so we'll have an old gawk at this.
Focus on buttons and keybinds. The Cessna is a very robust yet simple aircraft. To make use of our initial training courses, all the way through the traffic pattern training up to navigation flights, there will only be a few key bindings that you need to set. Our first keybind concerns the trim wheel. To fly accurately, you'll need to trim the aircraft to achieve stable flight attitudes, and we'll do this using the trim wheel. There is one setting for elevator trim wheel up commands, causing nose up movements, and one for elevator trim wheel down commands, causing nose down movements.
Now, this cannot be overstated enough. Having something bound to control your trim is classed as a secondary flight control. Trim is vitally important in this. It's vitally important because it's the only way you're going to maintain level flight or coordinated flight, by having your trim set up correctly. You can use your autopilot, but if you're able to trim your aircraft, there's a similarity here between airplanes and boats. It's amazing how many similarities you'll actually see about the physics and the movement, right? Water and air. They're very, very similar. You might have heard it before on a speedboat, for example, trim the engine, or you trim the prop behind you. It's the same sort of idea here, whereby when you apply trim, it moves a small little flap, be it on the elevator or on your ailerons, right? Think of it as like, you're positioning the control surface. It's doing the work for you, so you don't need to exert that pressure onto your controls. Otherwise, you'll be jaded. If you're holding a yoke or a joystick in a position to maintain flight, you start getting tired quickly because you're exerting force. In a real world airplane, when you do use trim to counteract the pull, right, or the push, you would trim out the forces. And this is something that we don't always experience in a flight sim, unless, of course, you're using force feedback. As flight simmers, what we tend to do, well, we'll use the trim buttons or the trim wheel in order to raise the nose up or drop it down. Do the same with the elevators, and you can do the same with the rudders. In the real world airplane, we point the aircraft to its pitch or its roll, right? We aim it to say, this is where I want you to stay. And then you start trimming out the resistance on your controls. So when you let go of the controls, they'll stay exactly where you've set them to. That is the difference. I heard someone say it before, it's kind of like the feeling of, if you were to like put your hand down, lift a whole load of sand, as you start opening your hand slowly, the sand starts coming out. It's that sort of a feeling that it's the load bearing on your hands, right? Elevator trim, aileron trim, you're going to feel that in your hands. Rudder trim, you should feel in your rudder pedals. But again, if you don't have force feedback rudder pedals, all of this has to be done visually. And there are ways to do it. I don't use a trim wheel. I do have a Bravo yoke over there. I tend to use the up down position on the hardware that I'm using. There's a little roller ball. That's how I control it. And you can do it to multiple. You can put it on an axis if you wish. So trim is vitally important for any flying, right? To go on then to talk about the viewpoints of setting up what's a good view to have, a lot of the times they're going to put them in there themselves. Aircraft manufacturers will put in the default camera views for you. So will do it with their fleet as well. The control sensitivities. This goes back to our axes and how much movement is required by you to have an impact on these control surfaces. This is an important one, so we'll watch this part.
Cockpit environment. We have a final note on control sensitivities. So these settings control how the input on your control device transfers to the movement of the control surfaces on the plane. So in real life flying, we often have more accurate control over our yoke and pedals than we usually get from the simulator control devices. In the real plane, the range of travel is often greater, but the aerodynamic feedback also provides dynamic stiffness to the controls. At Navigraph Academy, we've endeavored to use our combined experience operating the real Cessna to create realistic and more functional control sensitivity settings. Now, we suggest that you use the following settings. The aileron and the rudder benefit from a reduced positive and negative sensitivity. This reduced sensitivity near the mid-range of the range of device travel allows more precise roll and yaw control, while still allowing for maximum deflection if necessary. Note that in real-life flying operations, full control deflections are actually quite rare, and we are mostly operating in the mid-range of possible control device travel distance. With these settings, you will have more accurate control and suffer fewer overreactions as you apply the more common moderate roll and yaw inputs. In our opinion, there is no need to change the sensitivities for the elevator axis. Keep in mind though that if your device has a small range of pitch movement, a similar control sensitivity setting may be beneficial for the elevator as well. Let's now move into the final setup phase, covering the realism settings.
So this is important when it comes to the control sensitivities. A lot of time, I find anyway, Coronado aircraft, they have a tendency to be way too sensitive on their pitch axes. And that's probably because whoever is doing the flight model, they're probably using hardware that has a greater range, or the sensitivity is set differently than mine. So I always find with a Coronado Cessna, in particular a Cessna, I have to go into my control sensitivities and actually dial down the response curve of my hardware, because I just find it far too sensitive. What Navigraph are saying here, by and large, you don't need to worry about the elevator. This is purely on the aileron, our rolling capability. And if you do struggle with sensitivity issues, you know, I've only barely touched it and the plane went flying, this is where you're going to be able to dial in those settings. So they've recommended -6 for your aileron. I recommend trying that. Do a couple of test flights, see how it feels. If you feel now, yeah, it's a lot more flowy, if that makes sense. It's a lot more loose. I can really kind of throw it around control wise, and the plane doesn't react or it doesn't bite back quite as hard. That will lead you to having more precision or precise controlled movements, be it on a roll or even for takeoff and landing. And you can have a look at all your control axes. A lot of people will say when they, you know, if it's a third party airplane, oh, it doesn't feel right. Go in and tweak your settings just to see, does that fix it? Because for a lot of aircraft developers, chances are they're using different hardware than you are. And then when they dial in the settings for what feels right to them, by the time we get it, we're like, what the hell were they thinking? This doesn't feel right at all. So your control sensitivities are vital. So make sure you get in, have a play around with them. You'll see them in your options, in the control options, and have a little play around with them just to see if you can achieve a more stable control input, right? The last one then here that he's going to chat about are the realism settings. Realism settings in the sim, especially for flight training, I'd always recommend turning off crash damage. I would turn off any sort of pilot assistance, like, I mean, you can turn them on if you want, but like the likes of auto rudder, unless you need it, unlimited fuel, you know, auto mixture, I leave all of those off. There's also aileron assistance, elevator assistance. Ideally, you want all of these turned off to start off with, because you're going to learn, okay, it might be a little bit harder to learn, but you're learning kind of the correct way first. You can have those assistances turned on, or the assets turned on, but long term, you want to be planning that these are turned off. All right. So that's all our sim settings here. And they go into a lot of, like, there's a lot of detail in that already. And perhaps then you're, you know, if you are struggling with a particular aircraft, it's just too sensitive or it's just too wild, well, you can dial down the controls. And with Microsoft Flight Sim, you can save that sensitivity specifically to that aircraft. That aircraft, meaning that when you jump back into another airplane, you don't need to worry about resetting or changing, or, you know, it's your initial settings are already there. So it's very handy to have, right? So they were the control stuff. And if we have a look at this lesson, all we're going to be doing in this is making sure things are working, right? So we're going to be asked to start the simulator. and then step into the aircraft. So we're going to go to the briefing. This is the first flight, all right? So introduction, did we play this one? Easy now.
Today is all about getting to know.
Right, so we'll watch this. This is our briefing for today's flight, and we might do a couple of these, but it's going to be an introduction flight. And if you read down through it, right, what should I do in this lesson? So it's going to tell you. Well, they want you to test your camera view, check your key bindings. How long should you practice? There's no time limit until you're comfortable. And what do you need to do in order to pass this lesson? For this one, there's no requirements. You don't need to pass this lesson. This is purely an introduction, getting you used to your control settings, right? So we'll have a quick look here and see what they have to say.
Know your controls. No pressure, just making sure we're all set up and ready for training. Find your lesson by going to Activities, scroll to the right to Custom Content and click Lesson 1. You will find yourself on the ground. First order of business is to check your controls. Try the quick view buttons. Then explore the different views. There are 4 different views to choose from. Make sure you can access them all. Then move on to making sure you can use your aircraft controls. Looking down into the cockpit, you should see your yoke and your rudder pedals move as you move your control device. Make sure they travel in the same direction. It would also be nice to see the trim wheel moving when you trim, as you can see here. Great. Look up again. Try increasing power. The aircraft will move. Brake to a stop. Nice. Once you feel you explored all your bound controls, end the flight. The lesson will be marked as completed back on the website. That's it. Have fun.
Right, so a very basic, dip your toes into what's going to happen here, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to say, are you ready? Let's go flying. So it's going to say start the lesson. Make sure the lesson package is installed, and we're going to start this. All right, so we go into our sim, and we're going to go into activities. Inside activities, we come over here to custom content because we have Navigraph installed, and we're going to do part 1. Now, any sort of custom content you have, I mean, there's stuff here from, black box simulations, there's the Orbex Jurassic World, there's a lot of other stuff in here. But if we go in and we start at introduction, this loads up the information, right? Now, there are a couple of issues Navigraph are aware of. For instance, you'll hear that sound, you're like, well, what the hell is that all about? It's just, these are bugs that they're trying to work with Asobo to get them tidied up. So just be aware of them, right? If it happens, there's nothing wrong. I'm getting them as well. So this one, they want us to test our camera positions, and they want to get a feel for the 3 control axes, test some other ones, and check on your key binds, your trim, and so on. So I'm going to click on Start Flight, and it'll all load in, and then before we know it, we're going to be doing a thing with the plane. So let it all just do its stuff to load. And here we find ourselves sitting in our Cessna 172. Controls are all kind of neutral, not worried about things. So we're going to go through this of, well, where are my viewpoints, right? So I have all my views. What I do, I use all my views and I bind them to they're on my numpad, right? So you can use the default Microsoft Flight Sim button binding, right? So what I do, I'll say, right, if I want to look out my left window, it's number 4 on the numpad. If I want to look out my right window, it's number 6 on the numpad, right? Now while I'm waiting, I think if I go into settings here and just turn on my settings full blashed. Here we go. Zoom. If I want to look over my right shoulder, I use that as the numpad number 9. Now, I'm pressing that, there's nothing there, so I'm going to set one up. So if I want to look out this direction, there's number 9. And if I want to look out this direction, I'm going to call that number 8. I always set up then a GoPro view, which is like a dashboard cam, to number 7. Number 5 tends to be in the other seat if I'm flying right side, right? So I'll set up number 5 there. So now when I cycled through all of my controls, I'm happy that I have view out the left side, view out the right side. I have an instrument view here that's looking at the main instruments, right? I can probably adjust this a little bit. So if I do something like that, right, I can see my circuit breakers, but I can also see my G1000, and I'm going to save that as a view. My custom view, my custom 0 view is saved as this view here. and I'll also bind that to a button on my joystick. So for example, if I'm flying along and I'm looking out the window here, but without pressing the keyboard, I can reactivate my standard view just by hitting the trigger. I'd recommend you do something like that. Then we have external views. How do we control our view of the aircraft? In a flight sim, your views are most important. They're going to help you see what's going on around you, and how, if you can't see properly, you can't fly properly. It is as simple as that, right? So make sure that all your views work. Then you have things like drone camera. You can go in and you can set up your Xbox controller if you have one, and this is where you can, you know, cinematic stuff if you like. But even if you just want to be learning more about the airplane, this camera enables you to get really up close and personal. Like one of the pet hates I have with Microsoft Flight Sim, their walk around mode. There's currently no way to zoom in when you're in walk around mode. That's a problem because it's very hard to read and look at in detail where you're facing, right? The drone camera fixes that. And there's a number of different axes you can set up and speeds and all the jazz. Just like with your hardware, there's control responses. You can set up the various different speeds that are available for you. All right. So our first mission has been successful. This is purely down to cameras. Cameras are so important, and they don't reflect that in the real world, unless of course you're sitting in your aircraft. And if I were to show an example of you know, the pilot seating indicators, if I show you this, look, because this is fascinating stuff. In some of the larger aircraft, they have these indicators, and you might have seen them before, right? Video here from Sim Hangar, and he's explaining the eye position indicator. And the reason why this is important, the aircraft manufacturers, they need you sat in a certain position of the aircraft so that at a glance you can see exactly what you're supposed to see. So they have these little indicators, knowing that, well, if you can see, and depending if you're left or right seat, if you're sitting on the left hand side, the white dot should be blocking the right side red. If you're on the right hand side, well, the white dot should be blocking off the left hand red. That makes sense? So your eye reference is very, very important in the sim, but also in the real world. All right. So my position here, I always set up the same default view. I want to be center of the controls, so it's right in front of me, right? And then I don't want to be down here because I can't see what's going on, and I don't want to be too far up into the ceiling. I want to just, kind of like a car, you want to be able to see kind of over the bonnet. Now there are blind spots, but you still want to be able to see slightly over the bonnet. Then you'd set up a control just to look at your instruments, right? And that becomes particularly important when you want to do instrument flying, because when you're doing your instrument flying in the real world, and you'll see it in the sim, you won't be able to see outside. Either there's cloud, bad weather, it's nighttime or whatever, but your instruments are what you're going to have to look on. And then if you do set up additional buttons for a zoom in, right? Sometimes you can just use the roller ball on your mouse, it'll zoom in. I have it set up that I need to press my right mouse button and the roller ball, because there's nothing more annoying. If you're trying to roll, you know, your nav radios or something, and next thing the camera jumps in, you're like, ah, for crying out loud. So if you bind, for instance, I'll show you, if we go into our controls, and if you come on down here to our mouse, right? And if I were to say search by input, so if I roll the mouse forward, see the way it has zoom in, and then we'll have zoom out. See the way it shows the mouse button, but also a movement. And if you ever wanted to add an additional keybind for that command, just go over to the little settings cogwheel here, and this is where you can add in additional buttons. They're like a combination, right? So if I wanted to zoom in now, well, I can use the roller ball all day, it's not going anywhere. But if I press and hold the right mouse button and then use my roller ball, now I can see, right? And these are just handy kind of quality of life things you could do in your sim, because there is nothing more annoying. Let's say, for example, you're flying, you're in turbulence, you're getting knocked around, you're trying to use your mouse to turn your heading, but if you slightly move off that bezel or the dial, well, your camera zooms out, like, ah, for crying out loud, I need to get back in here again. So I use a button combined with the mouse roller. Little thing like that, all right? What else do we have? Yes, we also have eye tracking, right? Now, I don't know, this might work. If you're using something like head tracking or eye tracking, if we start this should work. There we go. I'm using open track because with open track, it's far better than the default Tobii stuff, right? So if I turn on head tracking, right, and I reset my position, so you'll need a button to reset it, and you'll need a button to turn it on or turn it off. So rather than worrying about buttons, moving my head or my eyes or both, that's going to achieve where I'm looking. And the reason why we have a button that resets your viewpoint, over time, your view, if I move my chair, or if I'm like this and that's my default camera, you want to be able to reset it. Now, I only figured this one out recently as well, and someone said Howard showed it off. So Howard's done a lot of stuff with the beam eye tracking stuff, but what we're using with Open Track, there was something that's been missing from Tobii for so long. If I want to look and stay in a position, if I turned off the camera, it defaulted back to this home view. That's a wreck the head moment. I just want to stay there and then look around. Well, if you use Open Track, you can bind a key that'll lock your view to where you're looking. You can lock it, meaning that now you can move your head around without worrying, right? And to do this, I'll show you the settings here. They're in Open Track. Now, Open Track, you can use your Tobii input, right? If you go into options, we have general shortcuts. So I have a button that's going to center my camera view. I have a button that toggles tracking on or off, but now I have a button that says toggle while held. This toggle while held, that's allowing me put me head in a direction to look anywhere, and now I can lock it in by pressing another button. So if I want to keep the camera there but then turn my head around, well, I absolutely can. And that's something that has been missing from Tobii for friggin' ages, right? So yeah, it's very, very handy locking your position to say, right, all my focus is going to be here rather than having to press buttons. Now, there's nothing wrong if you want to press buttons. I have the same viewpoint set up just by a button press. But sometimes if you're flying, maybe you can't see the buttons, maybe your keyboard is too far away, or you don't want to take your hands off your controls. That's what they're there for, all right? So that's what I do.
1850.
That's the wrong button. Right, so that's the first bit. Our camera views are vitally important. All right, next are going to be our controls. So what we're going to do here, we're going to test the axes of our controls. We're going to move forward, we're going to move back, we're going to move left, and we're going to move right. Now, if you look, even we're bringing this camera again, if you look at the movements of the joystick versus what's happening on screen, very, very sensitive. Very sensitive. The Virtual gear is very good because there's a good degree of travel and the Hall sensors and all this are quite good. But if I found that to be a little bit too sensitive, see the movement here that I'm doing on the stick on the lower right hand side, right? Turn this guy over a bit so you can see. That movement is having a direct input on the yoke. Alright, well, what if we want to change it? So we're going to go into our controls once again. We're going to come down here to the hardware, search by input, and we're just going to go for the aileron. So here's the aileron. Now check this out. If we go into the settings, we have what they do, right? We can add additional buttons to it. Input repetition, no, that's all grand. We can delete that. If we go to, where are you now? It's control gadget I'm looking for. Where's this now? Clear that. Sometimes this menu works, sometimes it doesn't. Back in here. Search by input. Where's the sensitivity I'm after? Let's see now. Flight control surfaces, primary flight controls, and I can see my aileron. So aileron axes, right? I thought it was in here for sensitivities, no? Control options. Cog next to the device on the left. Hang on now. We'll go back here. Ah, sorry, here it is. Sorry, that's it there. See the cog here? And see the way we have hardware settings. Now if we look at the joystick axes, thanks Oz, if I move this left or right, see the movement? Alright, if I move it up or down, there's almost no movement. So it's the X axis I'm after. Well, let's try what Navigraph said. Let's bring it down, the sensitivity, to -6. Right? Alright. -6. And see that we have a dead zone. Well, let's put in a tiny little dead zone of about 0.5. Now, we're going to go back. Now look at the movement on my joystick. versus what's happening on the screen. See the movement I'm able to do now? My flight controls aren't picking it up. If I want to move the ailerons left, see how much I need to exert for them to move. And that's what they mean. This is going to give you way better control over what the airplane is doing, right? Way better control. Now that's probably a little bit off for me. If I was using a yoke, I'd say yeah, 100%. So I'm going to change it specific to my controls, right? And we'll dial them back down. So the dead zone is probably a little bit much. We might go 1, and we'll probably bring this back over to maybe 1. And this is purely up to you. Navigraph will suggest try this, but it's entirely up to you. What feels better for your controls? I'm happy with that now. That feels good, right? Elevator, yeah, not too bad. You can do the same. And there's a tiny dead zone in there because the vertical gear is so sensitive. It's so sensitive. So that's my main flight control. All right, what else? Well, we have our rudders down here, look. So these are my rudder pedals. Same crack again. If I use my rudder pedals down at my feet, left and right, and also the toe axes. You see the pedals moving? Right? And that's based on the inputs I'm doing. So I know I have rudder control and I have my toe brakes. And they're all set up on axes. So they're working the way I want them. In terms of buttons now, well, we need things like the flaps, right? So is the sensitivity for all planes or just this aircraft? Every aircraft has the same settings. So Naughty, if you have an airplane from a third-party developer, for example, and as I said, Coronado, to me, are a devil for this. They're way too sensitive on their elevator axes, so I have to go in and actually dial it down a little bit. I found the same in the Lancaster. Because that's a 2020 built flight model, when you use it in 2024, it just handles a little bit erratically. So I can dial down the sensitivities to find the sweet spot. All right? Flaps, so I don't have flaps on in axes. These could be a button. I have a button on my joystick that will use them, and it's a switch. So I click down using my Mongoose switch. T5 is what I use, and I can go flaps down 1 notch or up 1 notch. You can put them on in axes if you wish, but it's a single button for me. Flaps 1. Some aircraft then don't have a flap lock switch, as in 5, 10, 20 degrees. It works off like a servo, whereby when you activate the flaps, they're going to start moving until you deactivate them. The likes of, I think Starship has it, the Aerostar has it, right? So that's okay. That's the flaps. Next up then is going to be the axes for my throttle. Now I'll notice that my parking brake isn't set. I can click on the instrument, or if I have a button bound to it, to fire up the parking brake. So if I now use my throttle, increase the power, that's working where it is. Again, depending on your hardware, if you think it's too sensitive, go back into the same menu and dial down the sensitivity, meaning that you'll have a much more finer input over your controls. Mixture, I tend not to use a mixture axes because I break things all the time, but it is there if you want it. I tend to use mixture with my mouse because I can see what it's doing and I can read EGT and all this sort of stuff. But you can absolutely put it to your mouse. Next up is our trim. An elevator trim is savage important, right? Again, you can use the mouse, just drag it up or down, or I use on my joystick, that's scrolling down, or that's moving the button up. And then I have a button that'll reset it. See that? It resets it into a position for me. Because that's always something you'll need to do when you're on the ground. Reset your trim. All right? Now, depending on the aircraft, you might also have additional trims, something like a rudder trim, or you can have an aileron trim as well. That depends on the aircraft that you're flying. With most aircraft, especially something like a Cessna, unless you see a trim wheel at the back, so this, or a trim tab, see this on the back of the tail assembly here? Well, on your Cessna 172, lads, it's called a trim tab. This section here, and in the real world, what you actually do with that section there, you can move it. You can almost bend it. It's like aluminium. And you would bend that based on the weight and balance of your aircraft. And that acts then as your rudder trim. Some more complex aircraft, you'll actually see trim tabs on the surfaces. So if we were to look at the elevator, for example, here's our elevator, right? You may have 1 or 2 trim axes. Now, on our left-hand side elevator, there's nothing there for the trim. But on the right-hand side, there is. So if we wanted to move the trim, just like what we did in the aircraft, if we have a look at this, you can see where the hinge is, right? If I want to start adjusting the trim, see the way now that trim tab is coming further down? Because that's me trimming the aircraft. See how far down it is? And it'll go faster based on input repetition. It'll move faster. So I've now set trim, and you can see it moving there because I'm using my controls here. So the trim tab is now nose down. Yeah, it's nose down, right? And if I wanted to reset this, click of a button, it'll reset it. All right. That's going to be nose up, and that's going to be nose down. And you can actually see the trims moving, right? What about the ailerons? Does the Cessna have aileron trim, right? Well, not really. There's no additional tabs on the Cessna. The good news is the simulator will do it for you as well. So if I wanted to change my aileron trim to, you know, aim off for the likes of P-torque and whatnot, I can still do that, right? I can introduce some trim into the flight controls, right? If I'm using aileron trim, so if I move this nice and easy, it's going to start moving those trim, the trim on the aircraft for me. So knowing how to trim is so important. It's so important, right? So to recap, we've gone through our camera views. We've also gone through some head tracking if we wish, right? We've also gone through our main flight controls, be it that it's our elevator movement or it's our aileron movement. We also have our rudder pedals and the brakes. We also have our throttle, mixture if we need it, flaps, and we also have our tab for trim. Now, depending on the aircraft, Cessna, lovely wheel. If you're in something like a Piper, tends to be a handle up in the roof like an old sunroof. You have to twist it, right? And it'll bash your head at times in turbulence. Ask me how. I know that. But that's kind of the basics, right? We figured out we need views, and these views, you can set them to all aircraft in your settings, or you'll have to go into each aircraft, set up your view, and away you go. So what we're going to do, we're going to come off the brakes. We're going to accelerate by adding in some power. The airplane starts rolling. Now you'll notice with the airplane, we have other things at play. Because in Microsoft Flight Sim, they are simulating G-force and forces of physics. P-factor. The torque of the engine turning is going to cause the airplane to drift in a certain direction. So to counter that, you would apply rudder. It's always called, you know, I'm doing the rudder dance. I'm applying loads of force with my rudder to keep the plane going. Now when you're taking off in a real plane, it's all right rudder, right? Especially in a single engine like this, it's all right rudder. Now once we get to about our 55 knots, gently pull back on the stick, and now we're airborne. And you'll see now the elevator is very sensitive. I'm only barely inputting, but look what it's doing on my screen. But my roll, the roll is way better. So let's go in and adjust the elevator, because it's a little bit, isn't it? It's a little bit. So hang on now, we'll resume. We can pause the sim just by pressing P. We'll go into our controls. We're going to come back over to the Warbird base. And if I'm going to move up and down, let's select a different axis. Oh, there it is. There's my up and down. Right, well, why don't we drop the sensitivity down to 1 and 1. And a dead zone, we'll put in at 0.1 as well. All right, let's see what impact this has on the aircraft. Way more smooth, way smoother, right? So I'm not really worried now that I feel more confident now with my control inputs. I can really find the finer details because I've dropped the sensitivity of my controls. Make sense? So any aircraft that you fly in the sim, if you just find it a little bit too giddy, get in and change the sensitivity for your controls. All right? So I'm happy enough now. We've gone through our cameras. Again, if we look at the trim, so without force feedback, you would just keep trimming the aircraft until you'll find that it's now flying straight and level. So I'm adding in trim. And if I let go of the controls, it should be doing or pointing exactly where I want it to. That's how we trim without force feedback. If you have force feedback, which I use, I have a yoke and a stick, you would literally hold your controls to the desired pitch or roll, and then you would trim out the resistance on the controls. That's how you do it in the real life as well, in the real world. All right, so you notice we're drifting off to the left here because I was messing with aileron trim, so I'll correct that by adding in right aileron trim, and then let it all calm down. And the gas thing is, as soon as you change your power setting, you'll need to retrim to that power. Watch this. If I increase engine power, what happens? Well, the nose goes up. The nose goes up. If I decrease the engine, what happens? The nose goes down, right? Meaning that for whatever power setting I have to do, you must retrim when you've changed your power setting. Now, they'll go into that later on in a different lesson, but your trim is so important. You will use your trim on your aircraft just as much as you will elevator and ailerons. You just will. You're going to use your trim, all right? Now, if we were to go in and have a look at some of the assistant options that we have, the assistances, if we look at piloting, auto rudder, assisted yoke, AI auto trim, so you can actually say, hey, you know, I want the AI to trim out my aircraft. And what that'll actually do in the sim, it'll make your airplane feel like you're flying something like, you know, an Airbus A320. They have the ability to auto trim. The F-18 does it as well, I think. As you take off, it holds that pitch that you've just done. All right. So there are a number of things in there. You also have auto mixture, gyro drift compensation, and then your realism settings for crashing, icing, fuel, wake turbulence. All the jazz is there. All right. So they're your pilot assistance settings. All right. So for this lesson, I'm happy enough. We've gone through our flight controls, primary and secondary, and we've gone through all our cameras. All right. I'm happy enough with that. I'm going to click end flight. We're going to end the flight. It's going to bring us back out to the menu. And as we're doing this, we're going to come back over to the Navigraph Academy website. Now this says, look, starting the lesson, lesson in progress. When you're done with the lesson, end the flight and come back here. It takes somewhere between 30 seconds and about a minute. If I refresh this page, it might be done. It's still updating, so we'll give it a moment. Usually it's fairly fast from the time Navigraph pull in the information. And what we'll see, we'll get a full flight debrief, just as you do in the real world. Your CFI, after your flight, they'll spend some time with you, right? So we'll give it a quick refresh again. Lesson in progress. When you're done, please allow a short delay. So give it a few moments. Hopefully this works. Lesson in progress. What's the sim telling me? Oh no, that's okay. So we shall wait. We just need to wait until this is done. Usually takes 30 seconds. Right. Took about a minute for Naughty Gnome. Okay, so it'll take about a minute. And basically what it's doing is it's just pulling all the data from Simlink. Here we go. Look, see the way it changed? So we can see flight debrief, view analysis, or restart the lesson. Let's go in and view our analysis. So this is showing us on a map what we've done. You can see where we rolled, we hit the brakes, then we took off, we flew, we did a bit of a left turn, then we kind of rambled over to the right-hand side. And we can see our scoring. You completed the introduction and aircraft familiarization. To pass, you need a score of 75%. That wasn't needed, but they always look for about 75%. We can go in and have a look at the flight record. So they would break down each and every part of what we've done with our flight, right? And you'll see this line here is going to show altitude, and then you'll see another colored line appear that's going to show you your airspeed. So you can actually go back and look at exactly what was happening during the flight. If you made a mistake, it's going to show you where. All right. So that's all been done. You passed the lesson. Let's check out the next one. All right. So now we'll go to the next lesson. This one is based on climbs and descents. Again, if you're not sure, go back to your catalog and then you'll see where you're at. So my next lesson is climb and because I've already done these. The next one is the effects on the controls. So master the basics of aircraft control. This lesson covers the elevator, ailerons, and rudder, the primary and secondary effects, and how they shape movement through the air. Okay, well, let's go in and have a look at this one. In this lesson, we're going to dive into what they do. The origin of lift. We have the forces on the airplane itself. Before we jump into the video, one key physics principle to understand, Newton's third law. The first picture, you'll see the aircraft wings slicing through the air. As the airflow moves over them, the wings deflect the airstream downward. This redirected airflow is known as a downwash. All right? Air has weight, and whenever something with mass is pushed in one direction, an equal reaction occurs in the opposite direction. That's Newton's third law in action. By deflecting the airstream downward, the wings generate an opposite force upwards. This opposite force is lift, the very thing that lets us overcome gravity. And the shape of the wing enables this. You can see the airframe hitting the bottom, and you can see it hitting the top. All right? Let's also talk about the center of gravity. And you'll see this a lot when it comes to weight and balance in your aircraft, CG settings, all that jazz, right? So imagine you're hanging your favorite model aircraft from a string as a decoration. It's a great way to explain center of gravity. The exact spot where it balances perfectly is its center of gravity, right? That's the point where the aircraft's weight is evenly distributed. Hang the string there and your model airplane will appear to fly gracefully through the air, decoration perfected. That balance point is called the center of gravity. And in a real aircraft, the center of gravity is crucial because its position directly affects both stability and controllability. Now, in real-world aircraft, they have their center of gravity, and then they have a range in which you can be forward, left or right, or behind the center of gravity. There is a limit to what that aircraft will allow. Otherwise, it won't be able to fly. And that it ranges from aircraft to aircraft. That's why you might see in like very small general aviation aircraft, if there's a number of passengers, they'll move people around purely from the weight and balance perspective, right? Another way to visualize the center of gravity, let's say you're standing on a raft in water. And if you're standing right in the center middle of the raft, everything's grand. If you walk up to the top right-hand corner of the raft, what happens? It'll sink. Go to the back left, it'll sink. You get the idea. Air and water, they're so similar, you know. Dave Cleary says, Murph, does any part of the Academy cover Navigraph and how to use it to its full? There are some tutorials with Navigraph, yes. I think they're going to come up later on. I have stuff on the YouTube channel as well, Dave, if you want to check it out, how to use Navigraph charts. There's tons of stuff there. When you add passengers, cargo or fuel, well, the aircraft's weight distribution changes. Every load has weight, and shifting that weight causes the center of gravity to move. If you did this to your model airplane, you would have to move the string to keep it level. In flight, the control surfaces can compensate for the center of gravity changes within a certain range. For example, if your center of gravity shifts forward, the elevator counters the nose down tendency, and if it shifts aft, it balances the nose up tendency. Right? So if you put all the weight in the back of the airplane, well, the airplane goes like that, like the boot of your car, or the trunk. The concept is key to understanding how an aircraft rotates and maneuvers around its three axes: roll, pitch, and yaw. Roll, that's moving left or right. You often hear people say bank angle. That's your roll. Pitch, well, that's your tendency to be facing upwards into the sky or straight down onto the ground. Yaw tendency, if you're sitting in an office chair, right? Well, if you turn your body and legs but keep your head facing forward, that's what yaw is. The aircraft is positioning itself somewhere else. You're trying to keep going this way, but that's what yaw is. So if you're flying and you have adverse yaw, it's giving you that movement. You know, your ass is kind of moving left and right. And then you get into things like yaw dampener. It'll dampen out forces and all this. We get into that later on. But they are the three maneuvers. They are the three axes: roll, pitch, and yaw. In the video lesson ahead, we're going to dive into the aerodynamics behind the primary and secondary effects of control inputs, and we'll get hands-on practice with rolls and wing rocking. Let's dive into this lesson now. So we'll have a look at this lesson. We've got about 15 minutes on this, but this is like some of the most basic stuff, the different forces of flight, lift, drag, weight, all these things, but also the axes in which we have to focus on as well, right? Briggsy, this is all for free. All of this is free. All the information that Navigraph are giving you, free. with a capital free. Right, very good, very, very good. So we'll have a look at this, and we're going to learn stuff now. It could be very basic. You're like, Jesus, Murph, we know this. Grand. Maybe you don't. So we'll have a listen and see what it's all about.
The freedom to fly starts with the freedom to move in all dimensions. A plane is a wonderful invention capable of allowing the pilot to traverse the atmosphere with detailed control over all three axes of movement. Welcome aboard Navigraph Academy, where you will learn to maneuver, navigate, and fly just like in real life.
What I might do, lads, I'll turn on closed captioning as well. If anyone has any issue, it just means they're on so you can see the subtitles.
Today, you will learn everything you need to know about controlling a plane. We will look at the controls one by one: the elevator, the ailerons, and the rudder. They move the aircraft around each of the three axes, and in doing so, they make us go where we want to go. Once we're familiar with the control inputs and the primary intended reactions of the aircraft, we will move into the secondary, unintended side effects. And at the end of the lesson, we'll be ready to jump into the simulator, practice these effects as they happen in real time, together with Jason. Let us begin with the elevator. On the Cessna, the elevator is part of the horizontal stabilizer, and it is connected to the control yoke via cables. The primary effect of the elevator is to make the nose either rise or lower, and moving the control device forwards or backwards causes the elevator to angle up or down. Note how the elevator directs the airflow around the stabilizer. When we move the control device to pitch down, the elevator also moves down. This results in an upwards aerodynamic force. If we move the control device to pitch up, the elevator moves up, resulting in a downwards aerodynamic force. These elevator movements cause a rotational force, in result causing the aircraft to pitch around the pitch axis. Thus, the primary effect of the elevator is to raise or lower our nose. As a consequence of pitching up or down, the aircraft will move with or against the force of gravity. So if we pitch up, the airspeed will start to decrease, and vice versa. If we pitch down, the airspeed will tend to increase. This causes airspeed changes, and this constitutes the secondary effect of the elevator.
Pitching may seem like a simple thing, but it is so easy to do wrong. It is important to raise or lower the nose carefully, especially if you have a control device which has a small range of movement or no spring force. Too much force could easily overstress the airframe. In the plane, I will ask you to look outside the window and slowly push the control device forward. Our nose will lower. Then we will do the opposite by pulling the control device aft and watch our nose raise again. It will be very important to give smooth and small inputs.
To hold the nose at a new pitch attitude, you'll realize that you have to hold the control device aft. The force of the airflow impinging on the elevator causes the elevator to try to move back into neutral position. And because of this, a constant back pressure needs to be kept to maintain the higher nose attitude. Now, on most control devices such as joysticks and yokes, this is simulated with a spring force, which will induce the feeling of a resistance the further you move the pitch control input away from neutral. We will return to this fact later on the climb and descent session, but for now, in summary, the elevator primary effect causes the aircraft to pitch around the pitch axis, pointing the nose either up or down. And the secondary effect causes changes to our airspeed. Our next control surface to cover is the ailerons. There are actually two ailerons on the Cessna, one on each wing. They are both connected by a linkage mechanism, and with the help of the linkage mechanism, both surfaces actually move together, ensuring that when one moves up, the other moves in the other direction, downwards.
Now, just on that, and it's important to note as well, again, bringing this back to real world, or even when you do your walk around checks, especially with something like a Cessna, the Piper, a lot of the Piper aircraft have it as well, right? This isn't fly-by-wire. This is mechanical pulleys and cables, right? So the importance, when you're checking your flight controls, the feel of them, you're going to make sure when people say, yes, they are free and correct. What they mean by that is they're free. So when they're moving, the flight control, left, right, forwards or backwards, It's moving freely. There's no resistance. There's no slippage or skipping, right? And the same can be done when you're testing your own peripherals in a flight sim, because sometimes your hardware, it may not be corrected correctly or connected. It may be on the way out, right? Or the sensitivity is far too much. So the same principles apply in the simulated world as they do in the real world. Now, in the real world, when you do your walk around check, this is what you're looking for. You're going to be checking the linkages. You're going to be making sure that all the control surfaces are responding the way that they should. So when they say they are free and correct, you're letting them know that they are moving freely and they are correct. If I roll left, aileron up, aileron down. I roll right, aileron down, aileron up. It's the same kind of concept. And then, of course, you're looking for the mechanical linkages where you'll see the nut or the bolt, making sure it's tight. There's no rust or corrosion. There's nothing broken. On the cable that you can also see on the likes of a Cessna, there's no, there's no braiding happening with the cable. It's not splintering off into all directions. You can do all that in the real world. When aircraft go in, then, they go for maintenance based on the number of hours. These are all checked. They tend to grease them up. They tighten them. They might have to adjust them. So it's all done in the real world. But as sim pilots, depending on the aircraft, some aircraft developers will actually code in wear and tear damages. The sim in 2024 by default has wear and tear. And it's not just over the likes of your wheels or your engine. They also do it in your flight controls. And what we covered last night on the news when we were talking to Zach from Moza, this is where you can actually bring the feeling of these changes into your hardware if you're using force feedback, in particular if you're using Moza force feedback. Because with the Moza profiles, we can change and edit the profile that actually simulates the additional strain or wear on these cables and control forces, meaning that you might have to exert a lot more force on the control input in order to get the desired deflection. To say we can do that now in consumer flight simulators for the price, this is huge news, lads. And that's why I'm so excited to see these control profiles coming down the road from Moza. It really does add to your flight sim experience because you're able to simulate wear and tear on the aircraft that you can feel it, rather than just kind of see it, all right? So it's a very basic rudimentary design. All of these cable pulleys, and you'll see them on a lot of older aircraft as well, right? Think of it in your car, for example. You got your steering wheel, you have your steering column, and then you have your steering linkages, in which then they actuate on the axle, moving the camber or the angle of the wheels left or right. Now you can imagine if you turn the steering wheel left, the left wheel moves left, but what if the right wheel didn't move at all? Well, now you know that your steering link is broken or it's worn. So it's the same kind of idea. You're using mechanical aids in order to move mechanical surfaces, hinges, pulleys, and also cables. It's very interesting. We continue on.
And when we shift our control device to either the left or the right, one of the ailerons is deflected upwards and the other one is deflected downwards. In this view, you can see that if we perform a control input to the right, the left aileron is deflected downwards and the right is deflected upwards. On the downward moving aileron, the airflow is directed downwards, and this creates a lifting force on this wing. And if we move to the other side of the plane, the upward moving aileron now has the opposite effect. This spoils and reduces the lifting force of the right wing. And note that the right wing is still actually generating a positive lift force, it's just less than the left wing. Because wings are designed to naturally create lift, and the upward moving aileron only reduces the total lift on that side. But the difference in lift will create a rotation, and this is about the roll axis. And we call this rolling the aircraft.
In the plane, I will demonstrate some rolls for you, just like you can see here. Again, it is very important to be smooth on the controls. If you find that your plane overreacts when you add small inputs, you should consider recalibrating your control sensitivities. Andy would be happy to help you with this in our control setup video.
The roll axis has a pronounced secondary effect, and this effect has actually been at the very core of piloting, even since the dawn of aviation. So it is vital that you understand the causes of this secondary effect so that you can accurately counteract it once in the plane. So let me explain how this works. The upgoing wing is exhibiting an increased lifting force, and this is thanks to the downward angle of the aileron. And lift is great in this scenario. It does lift our wing, it does roll our plane. However, it also comes with a pronounced side effect, because lift causes resistance and drag. And this is called lift-induced drag, or simply sometimes called induced drag. Now, looking at the aircraft from above, an increased lift force on this side of the plane also creates extra drag on that side. And since this drag is localized to this side of the plane, we will have a yawing motion as a result. This pushes the nose in the opposite direction of the bank and also in the opposite direction of the turn. This unintended yaw movement is called adverse yaw, and it is the secondary effect of the aileron, and it is also undesirable. Remember, we did not intend for the aircraft to yaw, we simply wanted it to roll. And due to the adverse yaw effect, the aircraft is now in a side slip, meaning it is not flying straight into or nose onto the wind. This is an uncoordinated flight state, and in order for the roll to be coordinated, we have to counter the yawing motion. So the aircraft once again aligns and straightens out into the relative airflow. This is done with the rudder, and the rudder is the third and final control surface of the aircraft that we will cover. On the Cessna, it sits at the very back of the vertical stabilizer. The rudder can either move left or right. For example, if we apply the rudder input to the right, the rudder surface will also move to the right, deflecting airflow in that direction. Now this in turn generates a force that pushes the aft of the plane left. Remembering that the aircraft moves about the center of gravity, which sits about here, we see that the tail moves to the left and then the nose moves to the right. Thus, when we use our ailerons and encounter adverse yaw, we must also use a rudder input to maintain stable flight. So in our example, entering a right turn, the adverse yaw caused the airplane to yaw to the left, and we therefore need to use right rudder to once again align the plane with the relative wind. And we're now maintaining coordinated flight.
Note here what Martin said. In a right turn, we must use right rudder to compensate for adverse yaw.
Hey, it's Andy here. Just a word on use of the rudder in simulators. So in a real Cessna, you would use the rudder pedals to move the rudder. Depending on your home setup, you may have similar rudders, a twistable joystick, or some other control axis bound to the rudder input. Coordinating turns is actually a pretty delicate and precise activity that requires fine inputs. So we only recommend doing this manually if you own a pair of rudder pedals. In all other cases, we just suggest that you turn using the auto rudder and turn it on within the assistance settings in Microsoft Flight Simulator. That way the sim will keep your turns coordinated automatically. It's also good to know that many airliners, such as the Boeing 737 and the Airbus A320, use a yaw damper, which basically acts as an auto rudder. If you use the auto rudder setting, you should consider this part of the lesson as good to know. You can still make use of the rudder to yaw the aircraft, but there is no need to specifically counter adverse yaw when rolling.
Let's go through how we coordinate our turns.
Now, before we jump ahead, does anyone know the importance of why you'll be using rudder pedals to adjust the yaw when you're flying? Does anyone know a use case why you might want to do that? Maybe you've been flying for a while and you already know the answer. Right? Peter says, your pedals are so touchy. Well, Peter, if you go into the control sensitivities, you can actually bring down that sensitivity from inside the sim itself. That should be able to help you. But for example, right, if you are flying along, what might cause the aircraft to, what'll cause your aircraft to change its kind of lateral position, that you have to use yaw input or rudder input to correct it. Turns are one thing, right? So as you bank or roll the aircraft in one direction, you're creating that adverse yaw. Therefore, you have to aim or yaw in that direction or rudder in that direction, right? And as a whole, we can do a lot of talking on this when it comes to yaw and coordinated turns. As I said, on your aircraft, you have what's called a turn and slip coordinator. You may have heard the words before, step on the ball. In aviation, what they mean is when they say to step on the ball, you'll have a small little ball like what you'd see in a Spirit level. When the ball moves to the right, you move your rudder pedal to the right until it moves back into the center. That's what they mean by stepping on the ball. But if you're flying straight, or at least you think you are, and you can see that that little spirit level bubble is moving, right? But there's things causing that. First and foremost is probably wind. It's probably the environment in which you're flying. And the end result is, again, another terminology used, is the aircraft is crabbing. Think of a crab, they move from side to side, right? And they have fingers like that move, right? But it's the idea, right? It's moving, crabbing. So to counter that, you would use some rudder input. Also, a slip. That's why it's called a turn and slip coordinator. You can slip an aircraft. You can have a forward slip. You can have all different slips in which you can position the aircraft to counter either the weather, i.e. the wind, crosswinds, or there's also a skill that pilots would use that would allow them to descend their altitude quicker without increasing a lot of speed. And if you think about what they've just mentioned about you pitch down, the speed increases, you pitch up, the speed reduces. If you need to pitch down, you can create your own drag, induced drag on the aircraft. But the best way to try and test this, you have two options, right? If you have like an air fan, a little propeller at home, put a sheet of paper in front of it. And as you adjust the angles of that sheet of paper, well, physics takes over the rest. You'll see the direction it wants to move. Or, and I don't recommend you do this, but if you're in your car, driving somewhere safe, roll down the window, stick your hand out a little bit, and keep your hand straight like that. If you put your hand up, what happens? Well, the wind flow pushes your hand back. If you put your hand down, what happens? The wind hits it, it pushes your hand down. If you move it to the side, it shows it to the side. It's the same thing with an airplane. These surfaces, the control leading edge, yeah, they're all impacted by the wind. You know what I mean? Navigraph are in the house. Good to see us, lads. Love your work. Love your work. But yeah, like it's there's many different analogies that you can kind of figure it out. And when you see, when it's like if you've ever driven like a manual car, that's how the clutch works. It's only when you kind of get it, you realize, I get it, right? So understanding what the forces are doing to your aircraft based on, yes, if you want to roll to the right, the left wing is now generating lift, and by doing so, it has a tendency of lifting the nose, but it's now inducing drag on the left side of the aircraft, meaning that, the plane is no longer traveling in a coordinated fashion. The nose is trying to move away from you, i.e. yaw, is trying to push the yaw. Therefore, you counteract that force, you counter the force by applying rudder. And you'll often hear it said, as I say, step on the ball. If you're turning right, you insert very fine inputs of right rudder. If you're turning left, you insert very fine movements of left rudder. Your rudder pedal, your foot, will move in the direction in which you're turning to get that coordinated flight. In the sim, it is there. It's very minute, right? You'll see it on your turn and slip coordinator, or as Navigraph recommend, just turn on auto rudder. Unless, of course, you have the hardware and you want to be doing all these things, it's not a big to-do. And you can still carry out the likes of slips and all this sort of stuff if you're crabbing. The auto rudder tendency is just to maintain when you are in a turn, when you're rolling, it will do the work to make sure you're staying within a coordinated turn. And that is actually part of your real world PPL. You're marked on how well you're able to do a coordinated turn. And it's not as simple, because if you're flying in a simulator with no real weather hitting you, the winds are calm, but sure, it's relatively easy. You put yourself, and now you're flying in a direction and you're dealing with maybe a 10 knot crosswind, which is having an effect on the aircraft, and you turn, well, your turn technically could now be getting rid of that crosswind component because of your induced drag. You're using the environment to do that coordinated turn for you. That's more advanced, but it's just to get you kind of, oh yeah, this can happen. This can happen, right? Another thing, I'm also very interested when I hear different accents, and you've heard it there from the instructors pronouncing certain words like yaw. It comes across as yaw. And it's something that's interesting, because if you ever heard this is one of these nice to know, useless bit of information, but it'll stand to you at a pub quiz. They have these from a military context, they have challenging words, or challenge, how to challenge someone. So if you've ever heard it before, maybe you've watched Band of Brothers or whatever, and you'd often hear thunder, flash. Well, the reason why the Allies would use thunder flash to identify friend or foe, well, if it's an American accent, thunder flash, all right? When it came to the Germans or some of the other guys, they couldn't pronounce that properly. Thunder would be thunder, and, flash would be flosh. So if they said, thunder, flosh, right? Or if they said, flash, thunder, that was the idea behind it. But it's always interesting where you hear different accents. Mine especially is all over the shop. But hence we have some subs on there. But hopefully you're getting the idea. You're getting to the grips of, right, if I were to move these control surfaces, be it the aileron, be it the elevator, or be it the rudder, there is an equal reaction happening. That as a pilot, you need to be aware of that because you need to counteract the new forces that you've induced on the aircraft. 'Tis fierce, interesting stuff, lads. Right, we'll come over here.
When we fly, we will start with a right roll. The first thing you'll want to do is look outside. Find a visual landmark in front of you. As we add right aileron input, we simultaneously add our right rudder input. If you add enough rudder to counter the adverse yaw, your visual landmark is going to appear to stand still in the windscreen. If the landmark is staying fixed in a place as we roll, we know we're countering the adverse yaw. A fixed landmark indicates that the aircraft nose is not yawing in either direction. If the landmarks move to either direction like this, recover straight and level flight. On the next entry, try to alter your rudder versus aileron inputs to match. This should prevent the landmark from moving. It helps if your aileron and rudder inputs are smooth, simultaneous, and relatively large. Smaller inputs can make it difficult to coordinate properly. A good approximation is to add aileron that equals about 1/3 to half of the total range of control input. As soon as you start applying aileron input, the adverse yaw occurs. Once you move your aileron control back to neutral, the adverse yaw will stop. This means rudder inputs are tied to aileron inputs, not the bank angle.
And again, to really kind of get a sense for this, if you're in like an office chair or a gaming chair, something that can swivel left and right, that's the yaw effect. So if you start, even sitting here with your controls, getting used to, if you turn your flight control, roll them to the left, right, what'll happen? You tend to roll to the right. Opposite. It's opposite. So think of those movements as you're trying to face this direction, but your body is now going somewhere else because that's the yaw effect. That's the best way to kind of, in your chair at least. As sim pilots, we sit on chairs, you see. So yeah. Flying Diggs is here. Good to see you. Aero, he says, name a plane for an edit. A Cessna 172. Osnomad says, I see many Fireflies picking up traffic infringement tickets in the coming days. Yes, indeed. It's very interesting to see these here as well. Like when you consider the likes of faster moving aircraft or precision aircraft, aerobatics, and you see how fast they're able to bank the aircraft to induce either an aileron roll or a barrel roll, the importance of rudder pedals is just multiplied, and the reaction speed, but also how much input they need to do. Remember, and I always say this, the quickest and most proficient way to learn any aircraft is flying it at a low speed, because your control inputs are going to be more pronounced, right? But you'll also get a feel for the aircraft at a lower speed, meaning that you must exert massive amounts of input in order to move it. In saying that, you don't want to go full deflection. And again, bringing up the control camera here, if you go full deflection, well, what happens? Everything is accelerated. The aileron will drop, one will rise, and that adverse yaw impact is so instant, it'll catch you off and it'll make the flight very unstable. The secret here is small but deliberate movements within a range. You don't need to go full deflection. Gently move the stuff. This is where you learn. It's only after you get used to it, sure, then you can go hell for leather and give it all sorts of inputs. And it's important to note as well, that auto rudder input, it can be so very handy in fixed wing. When it comes to rotary wing, we have a different set of physics you need to work off. But for flying fixed wing airplanes, as I said, if you have rudder pedals, it's good practice. But you want to be able to see on your on your instruments what's actually happening. You're getting visual reference aids here from the video. They're saying, well, look, if you look at a landmark, there's not, the problem with that is, depending on where you're flying in the world, there may not be landmarks. Now, landmarks come back to visual flight rules, i.e. what we can see. Forests, mountains, rivers, towns, aerials, all that jazz, right? But in order to give you kind of a better feel and understanding, your aircraft also has an instrument that is monitoring your turn and slip. Slip is your yaw coordination. So you can also look at your instruments for this as well. We'll have a look at this now in a little bit.
Whenever you neutralize the ailerons, also remove the rudder input, even if you have a bank angle. If you reverse aileron input, for example, to resume wings level attitude, you're going to have to reverse the rudder input as well. After we got our first taste of adverse yaw effect, let us try a few wing rockings. These are excellent maneuvers to practice aileron and rudder coordination. Wing rockings work like this. Now, pay attention to my yoke and rudder. At this bank angle, I reverse the roll and roll back the other way. My landmark should again remain fixed. Remember, as soon as reverse the aileron input, I have to reverse the rudder input. Continue the roll in the other direction. Once we reach the same bank angle in the other direction, we reverse again. Right aileron, right rudder. Again, my landmark should appear fixed. We continue doing this for some time, dipping right and left, practicing aileron and rudder coordination as we do it. In no time, you'll be a master of the aileron rudder coordination.
Let's discuss the rudder in a little bit more detail. The rudder sits at the back of the vertical fin, and it is connected to rudder pedals via control cables. And push.
Now, as we were saying, the analogy, and Malky said the same, I think the rudder pedal is more accurate. Think of the handbrake in your car. If you have a traditional hand brake, right, the lever, when you pull that up, you'll hear the cogs clicking, right? Effectively what that's doing, that's pulling the cable to engage the brake. And as then you press the button, lift it up slightly and lower it down, that releases the cable. It's the same sort of stuff going on here, whereby you have a control surface input that is either pulling a cable through a series of pulleys and tensioners, or it releases it. And it's going to be the same. Your rudder pedals, when you move your left rudder pedal forward, right, the cable is being pulled and it's pulling the rudder itself to the left. And the same then if you go right rudder, it's pulling the right side of the rudder to the right using the cables. There's two here. Now, depending on the aircraft, you might have two that go into one, that go back into two. Don't get bogged down with, how the specific aircraft design is. There are other aircraft, a lot of these new light aircraft, the sports aircraft, they use a lot of computers and individual motors, little motors. Now, when you turn, it's doing the auto turn for you. The technology is really getting up there when it comes to some aircraft. And of course, then there are modifications you can get, and indeed you can get yaw damper on the smaller aircraft as well. So you have loads of options. But just so you understand it, you're physically moving a cable. It's cables and pulleys. It's quite rudimentary, but that's what it is.
Pushing the pedals to the left or right causes the rudder to move in the same direction as the pedals. We have already established that the primary effect of the rudder causes a yawing motion. This movement occurs around the yaw axis, sometimes also called the vertical axis. However, the rudder also has a secondary effect, and you must be familiar with this one as well. If we press and hold the rudder input, the airplane will yaw. Looking at the airplane from above, we discover that as we add our yaw input, the outer wing travels forward. This increases the speed of the airflow on this wing. Meanwhile, on the inner wing, the opposite is happening.
Now, before he answers it, does anyone know what would happen to your airplane if you're flying straight and level and then you start using rudder input? As you can see here, by using the rudder, the left side starts to pick up velocity, the right side starts to slow down. Think back to what we were talking about with these forces. If the left side is going faster, the wing is moving faster, what happens when it goes faster? Usually what happens? It climbs. So what happens to the right wing if that's now slowing down? It has a tendency to drop. So by using your rudder, the aircraft not only will yaw, it will actually roll. And that's not from your aileron input, right? That's because the speed of the wing, it's generating more lift or it's generating more down, right? One thing when we're talking about slips and how to do all this stuff, to counteract that, we know that if we're turning a roll, we counteract the yaw tendency, we apply rudder input. Well, let's think of it. What if we apply rudder input? Do you need to counteract that drop effect or the raising effect? The answer is yes. You would use your ailerons to counteract the tendency of the airplane to roll. And that's how you get it into a slip. All right. So it's the same, but it's different. That makes sense. No, Murph, you don't make any sense. You have confused the entire operation. You're a muppet. We all knew that, lads, right?
Since airflow speed is directly linked to the lifting force, the difference in velocity between the left wing and the right wing now creates a difference in lift over the two wings. This generates a rolling motion in the same direction as the yaw input, now causing the outer wing to rise. The roll tendency is the secondary effect of the rudder.
When we fly our session, let us finish the day by seeing this in action. Now keep an eye on my rudder pedals as I press the rudder smoothly all the way to about a half deflection. You can see the yaw, and then we can see the aircraft start to roll. To counter the roll tendency created by the yaw input, we must use ailerons to remain wings level. Note that this rolling effect is quite small on the Cessna, but it's important that you understand the principle and get an intuitive feeling of the effect. This will help later when we'll start practicing turns as well as landings.
And we have now covered all the primary flight controls. Let us summarize what we have learned. We have 3 control surfaces that move the aircraft around the 3 axes. These are the elevator, moving the aircraft around the pitch axis. The primary effect of the elevator is to move us in pitch. The elevator's secondary effect is an airspeed change. Then we have the ailerons, moving the aircraft around the roll axis. The primary effect of the ailerons is to roll the aircraft. The ailerons suffer from the secondary effect called adverse yaw, and this must be countered with rudder input. And finally, we have the rudder, moving the aircraft around the yaw axis. The primary effect of the rudder is to move us in yaw, and the rudder's secondary effect is a roll tendency, which must be countered by us as aileron inputs.
I look forward to seeing you in the plane. Get your gear in order and find us at the Navigraph Academy website. There, you will find a recap of what we have discussed here, as well as an easy way to try these exercises yourself, right inside Microsoft Flight Simulator. Let's go flying.
Okay, so we now know what it is we're going to be doing for this next lesson. So let's go in and take a look at it. So for each lesson that you do with Navigraph Academy, you get a briefing like this. They really go into the detail to explain what's required and why it's required. So each and every lesson you do, you're going to get a full briefing like this. And when we complete the flight, we're also getting a briefing on how it all went. All right. So I'm happy enough with the video review. Let's go in. We can get some notes here for the recap, right? So remember the primary effects of using our 3 control surfaces, right? Elevator is going to be pitch, up and down. Aileron is going to be rolling left or banking left or right. And the rudder is going to induce yaw movement. Then we have the secondary movements. We have the secondary effects. What happens when our aircraft pitches up? Or what happens when the aircraft pitches down? Yes, you get a change of altitude, but the effect of what that's doing, it has an impact on force, in which is going to be your speed. If you pitch up, your speed drops. Now, does anyone know, how would you counter that? Using a different axes that we've already bound already. If we pitch up, how do we counteract losing velocity, losing that speed? What as pilots must we do if we want to increase our altitude? And the same thing, if we want to decrease our altitude, the speed starts going up, how do we counteract the speed? Your throttle, your thrust. You're going to be making changes to the power that the engine is producing in order to give you more thrust to get you up, or reduce the thrust to get you down. Now, in more complex aircraft, or indeed when you get into, what do they call them? slips and all this sort of stuff. You can also use what's called aerodynamic braking, and that's where you could say, you know, I have speed brakes or spoilers, I have the use of flaps, anything that you can do that will add drag to the aircraft is going to help you slow down. But drag is your worst enemy if you're trying to speed up, right? So again, they'll cover that in a lot more detail later on in the course, but it's to have that understanding. Get it in the frame of mind for every single action you do as a pilot. You need to be aware of the opposite action that is required. If you turn right, part of the aircraft wants to go left. You need to counteract all of these movements. And once you're in full control of that, once you've figured it out, Jay's right, now you know where you're at. Because the same will apply from flight planning, the weather, ATC. As a pilot, you must consider the counter effect. For example, what if ATC tell me I can't enter the airspace here? I don't know. You plan ahead, you'll counter it to say, well, hang on, if I'm not able to do this, I'm going to do that instead. And then I'll do this if I can't do that. It's the same with the weather. If I'm going to fly to the north today, but there's a big storm coming in, well, how do we counter that decision? We're not going to fly today. Or, you know, we'll plan around it, we'll fly around it. Yeah. So it's understanding as a pilot, it's not just one single, we're doing this. You need to consider every single counter to what it is that you're doing. And if you apply that thinking to what you do, not just, you know, in the real world consequences, but in your flight simming, always come up with the counter. Consider what the counter is going to be. Consider the counter required. Do you know what I mean? Let me say, Oberaldo, welcome in. Thank you very much indeed for the follow. So what we're going to do here with this flight, a couple of questions, and we'll answer this one together. Which control surface moves the aeroplane about its roll axis or axes? Is it the ailerons, the elevator, the rudder, or the flaps? So the control surface moves the airplane about the roll axes. Well, it's going to be the ailerons. Now we could say technically the rudder, but that's a secondary force. So we're going to say ailerons. The answer is correct. The ailerons are mounted on the wings and they are the primary control surface for roll. All right. Viber, good to see you, buddy. Now, banking the aeroplane, how do we counter the adverse yaw effect? How do we counter, as we bank the airplane, we now have this tendency of yaw moving in the different direction. How do we counter that? Well, we would apply rudder input. Do we pull back on the elevator? Do we lower the flaps? Or do we add more aileron? No, we need to counter that movement, so we apply some rudder. So we'll submit rudder. Answer is correct. What is the secondary effect of using the rudder? What did we just figure out there? So if we're using the rudder, we're level flight, straight and level, and we start inputting some rudder. What's the secondary effect? We'll yaw straight away. That's the primary effect. What's the secondary effect? What'll happen? Will the aircraft pitch up? Will we increase our airspeed? Will we just yaw? What's the secondary? Roll. It'll induce a roll on the aircraft. Right. So if we're ready, we're happy enough. Well, let's go to the briefing for the flight. Get ready to experience the very basics of flying firsthand. In this lesson, we're going to explore the primary controls. We're going to get a feel for how each one responds. What do we need to do? Well, our goal here is to get a feel for the aircraft in flight. Simply try out the 3 axes of movement, pitch, roll, and yaw, and feel free to explore the primary and secondary effects. Optionally, try some wing rocking as well. How long do we need to do this? There's no time limit, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, that's up to you. And what criteria, what must we do in order to pass this lesson? Well, thankfully, none. There's no pass rate for this. This is purely for us to get a feel of what's going on. As the course progresses, yes, we will need to get or meet certain criteria in order to pass. So, flight information. We're going to be flying over the Pyrenees in France at 5,000 feet and at 11:25 in daylight. So if we're ready, we're going to move this guy over to one side. In our activities, we're going to go and click the effects of the controls. Have our briefing here as well. You'll hear the sound. That's the sim just loading in your position in 2024. I so will need to fix that. But this is the flight we're going to do. So we now click Start Flight. Give everything a moment to load up, right? And then it'll put us into the aircraft and then we can click on Start. So remember, we want to try pitch, roll, and yaw. All right. Norse Viking, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're well. Any questions so far? It's very good, isn't it? Like, it's class all this is made available to us. Okay, so here we are now in our Cessna, and there's already a tendency for the aircraft to go a little bit to the left. The reason being it's called P factor or torque factor, because the power of the engine is spinning the prop. It's creating, it's creating a force on the fuselage of the airplane, tending to keep us to the left. It's known as P factor. You can limit that by reducing power, or you can trim against it. All right. So what we're going to do here, as we're flying along, again, we've the cameras up on our controls, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to try some pitch. So in order to do pitch, remember what they told us, nice and slowly we're going to pitch the aircraft up. Now, straight away, what's happening? Well, I can see on my instruments that number one, my altitude is increasing on the right-hand side, but number two, my speed is dropping off on the left-hand side. Now, to counter this, I can apply more power. So I'm going to hold roughly 10 degrees. I've now applied more power, and see the way that our altitude on the right is still climbing and our speed on the left has now settled down. It's now holding because I've applied more power. Brilliant. So we'll throttle out, we'll go back to level flight. Calm everything down. The speed will eventually regain what it was doing. And we can use our secondary controls to pitch for trim for pitch, right? So if we have a look at it here now, our speed, we're in around probably 80 to 90 knots. And that's the advantages, of course, of your G1000. I mean, you've so much information here when it comes to what's on your screen. So we can see they use these ribbons on the side, these tapes. We can see our airspeed and see the magenta colour, that purple colour. Well, that's showing you what's going to happen next. So that's showing us that, well, this purple line is going down. That's indicating we're going to lose our momentum, our speed, our velocity. The same can be said over on the right hand side. We can see our altitude. Now we've numbers on the outside, they represent your vertical speed, how many feet in a minute you're going to achieve. But if you look at the little ribbon here, it's showing us in a downward, we can expect a downward motion. If I start pulling up, well, the right side magenta line will start going up because we're increasing altitude, but the left side starts to drop because we're losing speed. And we can counter that by applying power. So we apply the power, and now we're getting both magenta lines moving in an upward direction. That means we are either A, increasing or maintaining speed whilst maintaining our climb. All right, what about the opposite? So if we now go for a nose down, well, we can see the right hand side, vertical speed, we're dropping, and the counter to that is, well, our airspeed is starting to pick up something fierce. To counter that, we'll power out. So as I reduce the power of the engine, we're still descending, but look at our airspeed. It's starting to slow down, right? Trend tape. Good man, EJ. Your trend tape. Now this is unique, obviously, on the G1000. It's just giving you more information. But there's other things we can look at as well, right? So we can see now I'm maintaining a descent and I'm not accelerating, right? If I were to bring more power back in, the nose, because we're putting power, tries to go up. If I hold the nose down, well, we're still descending and then our airspeed picks up. All right? So I'm happy enough with pitch. Pitch is doing what I expected it to do. All right. What about roll? So if we want to roll the aircraft, and remember, when we start to roll the aircraft, we need to expect the counter, which is going to be adverse yaw or induced yaw, right? Now, in terms of a turn and slip coordinator, if you're in a steam gauged aircraft, you'll see an analog device showing you your turn and your slip. If you're on a digital avionics setup, the likes of a G1000, well, here's your turn and slip coordinator up at the very top. The line is the roll, the triangles are the roll, and see the line underneath the triangle? That represents the rudder, or the tail of the airplane. So if I do a roll here to the left, look what happens. See the way that the yaw tendency is moving away, so I need to move my rudder pedal in on the left hand side. Now it's a little bit sensitive. See the way that's after firing across? So if I keep it lined up with my instruments, that's a coordinated turn, or at least to the best that I can make it. If I come off the rudder, you'll see that that line starts moving away. All right? Put us back to straight and level. If we were to do it looking at a landmark or visually looking outside the aircraft, well, if I try a right turn without using any rudder, see the way you can already sense the nose is dropping and we're kind of going sideways. So if I were to throw in a small bit of rudder, only a small bit, you'll see everything turning that little bit clearer. It's more coordinated. You're not dropping altitude, you're not losing speed, you're just turning. All right? So that's the ball, yeah. So you put your foot on the ball, step on the ball. That's what it is, right? Now, some aircraft are going to do this an awful lot better than others. Now, if we were to go in and turn on one of the assistances, if we go, right, tell you what, give me auto rudder here for the moment, and we'll save it. Look what happens now when I start turning, right? So I'm gonna start turning here. We'll roll left. See how more accurate that is, because I don't have to use my movements. The ball is pretty much staying with it there, right? And as we move to the right, the rudder is pretty much keeping up with exactly what it is I'm doing. If I turn left, I insert a bit of left rudder. If I turn right, I insert a bit of right rudder. If you use the auto rudder, the sim is going to do it for you. Yeah? And as you're looking at it, you have the triangle and then you have the line underneath it, almost like a pyramid if you like, but that's the idea. They stay close together. Now if I just throw in some yaw, if I just use rudder input, see the way that's now moving? Way away from the aircraft. And to counter that, to keep my wings level, right? That's now showing me from an indication point of view, the aircraft is yawing. But I'm counteracting the roll tendency by keeping the aileron straight. But if we were to look at what the plane is doing from the outside, we're not going dead straight anymore, we're actually going sideways. Hey, Ali is here, good to see you. That makes sense? If I take out the rudder input, we're back to nose flying or straight flying. Alright? We're a little bit low, so we'll regain a bit of altitude here. So depending on what your instruments are, G1000 or analog, I find the analog one a little bit easier to follow, right? Especially if you have like refresh rates or frame gen, they impact on your digital displays, right? So auto rudder turned on, it makes life so much more easier. But if you want the extra challenge, turn off the auto rudder, right? And now we need to do this ourselves. So as we turn, we need to, if we turn left, we need to rudder left. See how much faster the turn is. Now when we start straightening out, we also need to release the rudder input because we're back to normal level flight. We start turning right. And again, we just turn the rudder ever so slightly into it, right? Try and keep it there. If you put too much rudder in, what happens? You can see what happens. The aircraft is now yawing and the roll rate will actually increase. Alright. So we have our pitch movements, we have our roll movements, and then we have just yaw. So if we throw in some left rudder, see the way the wing is starting to drop? So we counteract that by putting the ailerons to the right and keep the wings level. This is called a slip because we're now technically slipping the aircraft. And if you look from the outside, you'll see, well, we're not going straight now. We're actually crabbing the aircraft. All right. By doing so, we're also increasing drag. So if you look at our speed is starting to drop even though we're maintaining the same altitude. So we're actually creating aerodynamic braking here, right? If I counteract it, go back to level flight, see our speed starting to pick up. At level flight, we're up at nearly 100 knots. And if I just use right rudder and level it off with the aileron, look at our speed now. So we're able to use it as braking. Pretty cool, right? Now the other thing then is the wing or the wing rock. So in order to do this, if we want to go right, left, right, left, it's not very accurate, is it? But what if we use our rudder inputs along with our aileron inputs? So if we say right, left, right, left, and then try and keep your pitch somewhat level. But that's where your wing rocking comes into it. And depending on your own setup, it takes a couple of minutes to kind of figure this one out. Your sensitivities might need to be adjusted as well, right? But you get the idea. Now, there's other things. The advanced part of this, if we want, you know, you can deploy your flaps, for example. Well, what might happen if you deploy your flaps? What's the tendency of the airplane going to do if you add more drag? Well, your speed is going to start dropping, but also because you have all that airflow pushing down on the aircraft, right, all around here, what's going to happen? It's going to force that part of the wing downwards, which is going to lift the front of the nose. So when you apply a notch of flaps, right, make sure you're not too fast. We can go with one notch of flap here. Look what happens to the plane, right? The nose is going to lift. So we'll trim out for level flight. One notch of flaps without touching anything. Look at the nose starting to go up. So when you're flying and you're planning your approach or whatnot, you need to counteract that or be ready to counteract that. As you start extending the flaps, it's going to force the nose up. But also, if you're on takeoff, right, let's say you've taken off with, like, I don't know, 10 degrees flaps, right? So let's go 10 degrees flaps and we'll pitch the aircraft with a bit of speed. That's 20 degrees, is a bit much. We'll go 10 degrees flaps. And we'll pitch the aircraft in a climb, right? 75, 76 is grand for the Cessna. If you're looking at your instruments, if you're not looking at your instruments, you might also hear it say, keep the cowling on the horizon. What I mean by that is you're keeping the cowling off the engine that sits fixed on the horizon. For most aircraft, that should give you, you know, somewhere between 5 and 8 degrees of a climb. So we're now flying with the flaps extended 10 degrees. See our airspeed and our nose, our pitch, everything's fairly straightforward. If I retract the flaps, put them to 0, the nose will drop because it's the change of drag, yeah? So when we're flying, we need to be aware of this. And as our speed picks up, the nose comes up. If we kill the speed, kill the power, the nose drops. It's the same thing. You're getting the same results. You'll also find then, when we're talking about P factor, the tendency of the airplane to kind of roll left with this particular aircraft single engine. When you increase your power, right, have a look what the airplane is trying to do. It's going to slowly but surely try and start rolling us left, because the factor of torque on the engine spinning is going to start moving the wings left, right? Whoa! Buttons! Alison, you absolute mad divil, you! Alison Johnson gifting 10 tier 1 subs to the community right here on Twitch. Ali, you are so incredibly kind. Thank you very much indeed. And lads, if you got a tier 1 sub, with thanks to the lovely Alison Johnson, will do be sure to say thank you. I'm sicker than a ghost staring at thunder. Oh, you poor old Divleen, what happened? I have a cough and everything. We're all in a terrible bit. So the tendency here at full power is making the aircraft roll left. Look what happens when I take out that power. Yeah, the nose will drop. Let's hold the nose level. But see now, I have a tendency to roll right because I have put on or inputted some trim. All right? So we get the idea, right? Alex, pressurize the PNR continuing to the alternate ahead. Pre-flight planning for determining fuel required. We can go, that's later, you know, way later in the course. But yeah, we can certainly look at that. Captain Sickbag, good to see you. Hope you're well. So we get the idea from this lesson. Pitch, if we pitch up, we lose speed. We counter that with more power. We pitch down, we increase speed. We counter that with reducing our power. When we roll left, we counteract the yaw tendency by rudder left input. When we roll right, we counteract the yaw tendency by putting the rudder pedals into the right. If we're flying straight and level and we want to use yaw input to the right, we counteract that by putting the ailerons to the left to keep the wings level. If we want to do the opposite, we want to put full rudder left, we counteract that by putting the ailerons to the right. Are we happy enough? Basic flight controls, but take time to practice on them. And then we have the wing rocking exercise, whereby, see the way the plane isn't properly going left or right, but if we use rudder and aileron together, it's much more effective to rocking our wings. Much more effective. All right. So that concludes that lesson. We're going to come back here and click end flight. And in a couple of moments, we're going to get our report back to us from using Navigraph Academy. All right. So we'll give it a few moments. And what we've covered there was pitch, roll, and rudder. That's what we've done with this lesson. And this is just familiarization. This is just getting us used to the controls of the aircraft. Yeah, absolutely. Vital for stall recovery. Because again, what happens during a stall? What stalls on the airplane? Well, you can have a mechanical stall, as in the engine, but if that happens, mixture, magnetos, starter, fuel, right? When we talk about a stall, the wing or a wing stalls, right? So what happens is, as you turn right, if you roll right, the wing on the left starts speeding up, the wing on the right slows down. You could stall the right wing and it drops. If it stalls, it drops, right? So we can see here now, the flight is done, view analysis. Well, let's go in. And you can see what we've done, where we started from, where we flew around with all our different maneuvers and where we finished it. So we've completed this. If we go in and have a look at it, we did our pitch, we did our roll, and we did our yaw inputs. So that's our second lesson done. So we have a good understanding now of how Navigraph Academy works, how it can connect to Microsoft Flight Sim, but also the depth of course material that Navigraph have done with the instructors, be it from the CFI perspective, your pilot instructor, our ground school instructor, and also our sim instructor. Everything's linked together, you know? Ireland Fran, good to see you. Isn't a stall a technical term for the airflow over the wings not providing enough lift? That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So the engine might seize but doesn't stall. Kinda. You could stall an engine. Think of a gear, like you can stall it. But when in aviation, a stall is always about airflow over the wing, not producing lift. When you stop producing lift with a wing, it means it's stalling. All right. So that's the first two done here. We can move on to the next lesson. We can go off and have a look at the course catalogue. We're working on our virtual PPL, in which we've just done lessons 1 and 2 today. We'll work on next week. We'll do more where we're going to go into level flight and turns, climbs and descents. Then we get into stalls and dive to max speed, slow flight and flaps, takeoff, landing, the traffic pattern, and all the way up to our first solo. And that's all part of the virtual PPL. Other lessons coming down the line is going to be on instrument flying, and we're going to have instrument approaches. So we're very much moving to the IFR side of the fence. And you can see again, you can go back, we can have a look at each and every flight that we've done, the scores we've achieved or obtained for each flight. You can go back to keep all the records there. If you're not happy with a score, for example, I did one where I got 75% on level flight and turns because it gave out to me because my speed had changed. Right? I was like, oh, what? And that's what it looked like. I said, right, well, I'm going to do that again. So I went from 75% to 95%. And where the speed was a problem, it was poor, I changed it from poor to satisfactory. So I got a much higher score. That's how the course can directly impact on what you're doing because it's giving you the feedback. How incredibly handy is this? Scheme says, it's interesting, but how do I get it? Just go to academy.navigraph.com. It's all there and it's free. You need to have Microsoft Flight Sim. All right. I'll put this in the chat for you, lads. It's all free. You do not need to be subscribed to Navigraph to avail of this course. It is not members only. It is not subscribers only. Navigraph have made this free for the entire Flight Sim community who are using Microsoft Flight Sim. I'm sure the plan will be get it onto X-Plane at some stage, but this is a free course open to anyone who'd like to do it. And even if you're on X-Plane or P3D, I mean, you can still access all of the course material. The only thing you're going to miss out on is the scoring element. You won't be able to get the scores because they can't track the aircraft. You know what I mean? But it's very, very good. I'm enjoying it so far, I have to say. And you can see, like, there's a breakdown of each and every maneuver that you've done here. You know, your airspeed, altitude change, the bank, and also the coordination. And then you can see your altitude and your speed. Go on up to the map here, have a look, and you can see, yeah, that's what you did during this element. There is the actual element. So it has a great way of debriefing what it is that you've done, right? Other things then, you go into my exams. This is where it's going to show you the exam results, and you can do them again. And then, as we looked at earlier on, you have all your resources. They're the resources from your checklists to the aircraft user guide and so on. And I imagine all these resources are going to be expanded in the coming weeks and months. Do you know? Sarah Doman, good to see you, buddy. Welcome in. Right, so that's going to conclude this part of today's live stream with Navigraph Academy. We're now going to move on, and we're going to have a look at our VATSIM flight for this evening. Tonight, we're going to be flying on VATSIM in the Phoenix A320, and we're going to be departing Cincinnati in the United States, and we're flying on up to Chicago O'Hare. So we have a couple of things to get ourselves ready. So we'll do more Navigraph stuff next week, lads. And as I said, it's all saved on YouTube to check it out. Our next little section here now is purely on our flight for this evening, which we're going to be doing in Microsoft Flight Sim. So as we always do, we're going to go in and have a look at the weather, and we're going to plan for our flight. So let's have a look at this. We'll come on over here. On our Discord, each and every week, Naughty Gnome will post all the VATSIM flights, right? So if we go into VATSIM and VATSIM Thursday, so this is our flight for this evening. Open a full view. So tonight, we're going to be flying from Cincinnati up to Chicago. So what's in Chicago? Well, it's massive skylines and Lake Michigan coastline. Chicago is a highlight in any flight sim. It's great for both airliner and VFR flights, with landmarks such as the Navy Pier and also Soldier Field. Interesting fact, O'Hare International was originally named Orchard Field, but renamed to honour the World War II flying ace, Edward O'Hare. We have some options when it comes to Cincinnati with our sceneries, and we have some options when it comes to our arrival scenery. It's a handcrafted default airport for the Deluxe in Microsoft Flight Sim. So that's what I'm going to use. Now, there is an expected route we can see. It's going to be on the Hagall 5 departure and the Watson 4 arrival. We'll have a look at this. So let's start planning in our flight. So we'll go to SimBrief, and we can load some stuff in. We're going to go to dispatch. SimBrief all powered by Navigraph here as well. It's a new flight, and we're going to be that of Firefly 235 departing out of KCVG, and we're going over to KORD. Aircraft for tonight, I'm going to stick with the A320, and we'll put this in as the Phoenix CFMs. And let's have a look here. So it's the, that looks to be correct. Plash, Watson 4. There we go. So our block time tonight, flight time is only about an hour and 20, hour and a half. And we're going to be leaving Cincinnati, heading to the north over Fort Wayne, and then into Chicago. So that's what the routing looks like. Sweet. Let's generate the flight. And now let's go in and have a look at the weather. This is important. In any flight, we need to work on, well, what the weather is going to do. So if we have a look here, well, we can see the current temperatures. Then we'll move our time to 8 o'clock my time tonight. That's when we're doing it. So we're going to be pulling out of Cincinnati, where it is cold, -1 to 0 degrees. And Chicago is sitting at about 1 degrees as well. It's cold on this, the Thanksgiving Day. Now, if we have a look at the wind, temperature is cold. Let's go in and have a look at the wind. Well, ground temperatures, right? The wind is coming in from the west, about 13 knots. So that'll dictate the runways we're going to be using. When we get to Chicago, they're coming in from the northwest, similar speed. If we move the time on a little bit later, no significant change. It's still around 12 or 13 knots coming in from the northwest. But what about our en route? What about at altitude? What's the wind doing? So we'll increase our altitude up to about 30,000 feet. We're going to be dealing with about a 60 knot headwind. The wind is going to be blowing against us. So we need to plan for that. That comes into our fuel and also our timing. So we're going to have a headwind when we're flying later on this evening. Next up, let's look at the cloud coverage. So it's going to be 100% overcast in Cincinnati when we depart. And come 10 o'clock, it's going to be 100% overcast in Chicago. We're going to be taking off and landing under cloud cover. Right, what about precip? Is there rain or snow? Well, at the moment, no, there's not. But if we have a look over here, over Michigan, Kalamazoo, there is a band of snow moving to the east. Is there anything coming in from Chicago? No. It appears to be dry. Come midnight, there is a band of weather coming in, but that's not due to hit Chicago till around 6 o'clock in the morning. So we're not expecting any precip. All right, fair enough. Happy enough with the weather. It's cold. The winds are coming in from the west, and we shouldn't expect precip, but it will be cloudy. All right, that sounds good to me. Next up, VATSIM radar. Let's have a quick look. So we're going to be going over here. Is there any ATC online at the moment? There is not. Okay, so we'll now go into our simulator. We're going to go back here to our menus. And we're going to select the aircraft, power it up, and make sure that all our sceneries are working. And then we're going to review the flight plan itself. So we're going for the A320, this one from Phoenix, the CFMs, that's what we'll do. And we're going to load ourselves into Cincinnati. Right, so there's Chicago, here's Cincinnati. And we'll load ourselves in just to make sure everything's working as expected. Now, we landed here last week. I think we threw ourselves up here somewhere, I thought. Now, because we're taking off to the west, I wouldn't be surprised if it gives us 27 for our departure. So let's go in and have a look. So we're going to open up Navigraph charts. And we're going to import our flight from SimBrief here. So look. So runway 27 is what it's given us, because the wind we know was coming in from that side of the fence. So runway 27. So ideally, Concourse B would suit us. Short taxi, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's plan that we're going to depart out of Concourse. Let's go gate B19. B19, set as departure. And now let's see what happens here. We're going to go in. We're going to set live weather and live time. And we're going to start the flight. While it's doing that in the background, I'm also going to turn on vPilot. So we know that we're going to be flying on the VATSIM network, and then we'll connect everything up in the moment. Phoenix aircraft is loading up. We also get to try out the new GSX. I do think I need an update, so I'll make sure I get the update on the GSX a little bit later on. Right? So here we are with our A320. That's all looking good. We're going to click fly now. Make sure my head tracking is working, which it is. Into the aircraft. And let's see what happens. Wicked Lumberjacks, thank you very much indeed. 11 months, man. Cheers. Thank you very, very much indeed. Okay, so the aircraft is loaded in. That's a good sign. And I didn't update AirAct just yet. No, I'll do that now after the stream, because I need to update GSX as well. So it's not going to have a huge impact. We're still flying the same route. It's not going to have a huge impact. So let us have a look here. Ground power, just make sure the aircraft is working. You can import the flight. Ground services, GPU indeed is there. And we can go up and activate our batteries. Battery 1 and battery 2. Ground power. Crew supply, ground control, emergency lighting. And let's start getting some power into the aircraft. Get some lights on here as well. And we get the logo and the wing lights turned on for good measure. And let all this start warming up. So as we're on the ground here, let's go around and check the airport. That's the kind of weather we're expecting later on, lads. It's dry, but it's cold. No major glitches, no major stutters. Everything here is looking quite okay. So we're planning pushback onto the taxiways, runway 27. That's what we're planning, right? So a little bit of stutters there. A sim restart will fix all of this. All right, we're looking good there. Let's see, can we connect to VATSIM? I have a green light that shows me that I'm connected. And if we have a look in here, our little airplane will probably appear on the ground here now in a moment. All right. So yeah, I've got a couple of things to do. I need to update GSX, and I also need to update my AirAC data. Right. I can probably do that now from Nav. I'll do it through the data manager, because that's all my X-Plane stuff. So we'll grab all the updates, and then I'll do it with Microsoft Flight Sim here now in a moment. So there's me, Firefly 235. We're now live on VATSIM. I can see that it's connected. There's no radio frequencies here. There's no controllers on board, but we know what we're doing, and we can see what's happening. Lovely job. Right, our next mission now is to get ourselves over to Chicago. So back to the aircraft. Let's just check with GSX. It's probably going to tell me it needs an update. GSX Pro outdated, so they want an update. All right. So we're going to end this flight and we're going to load in Chicago. After that, then we're going to look at all our charts to get an idea of what's happening. NM Flyer, many happy returns. Happy Thanksgiving to the US. Hope you're well, buddy. So let's go into KORD. Chicago O'Hare. And this is one of the bespoke airports. It's one of the handcrafted ones in deluxe or higher, right? Now, this is a big ass airport. So where do we want to be? Jesus. We're going to be landing probably on the 28s or 27s. Is it 27 or 28? 28. 28 left, 28 center. All the 28s. Or we have 27 left. So we have 27 left, 27 right. Man alive, there's a lot of runways here, isn't there? What do we do here now? Right, 28, 27 left, 27 center. Okay, we'll plan for 27 center. That's where we think we're going to land. Now, what's up here in terms of parking? Cargo. And then we have our gates. Right, we'll load in down here and we'll check out the airport for the crack. So same crack again, live ride or live time. Yeah, possibly 28 center, yeah. That's what it's giving me on Navigraph or on SimBrief. So we'll see what happens here, make sure all loads in, and then we'll start looking at our flight plan when it comes to our charts, right? While this is loading, go ahead and bring up Garmin. It'll work eventually. I'm sure it will. Oh. Now, Murphy, you've broken it. Fire up lonely screen again. And we'll turn on screen sharing. And let's see what happens. Would you please do an EP for the sector? 1 in op at critical point. Depressurize with descent flight level 130. Alex, no. No, we've other stuff to do today, buddy. Now, why isn't this coming up on my screen, lads? Right now? Garmin Pilot. There we go. There we go. All right, so let's see. 28 or 27 center, right and left are used momentarily. Ah, okay, sweet. Thanks, Roy. Right, into the machine. So they're down there now, and we'll calm it all down. So our route, we'll type it in here. So it's going to be KCVG, Cincinnati, and our destination is going to be KORD. That's wrong. KORD. KORD. Chicago O'Hare. En route, we're going to be via Plash, PLASH, which is an RNAV intersection. Then it's going to be FWA, which is a VOR, FWA, Fort Wayne, and then we're in. So we can start planning our departure. So select departure. We're planning the Haggle 5 off of runway 27, and it's via Plash. And then our arrival into Chicago. Select the arrival, which is going to be the Watson 4, and that's going to be via FWA, and we're saying it's going to be runway 27 center. Okay, let's go ahead and create this, and let's see what happens. Okay, syncing, thinking about it. Let's go ahead and activate. Okay, so there's our route. All right. So about 1 hour and 20 in the air, and that's how it's all going to turn out. Quick look at the charts here. So we're going to be saying the airport diagram out of Cincinnati, straightforward. There's the Haggle 5 departure, We'll go in and take a closer look at this in a moment. Here's the Watson 4 arrival. And then here's Chicago Airport. Look at the size of this airport. That is ridiculous. Right, so let's have a quick look here once again. So I'm happy enough with the aircraft. Let's go out and explore the scenery to make sure there's no massive problems. It's a huge airport. So this is the default one, or at least the bespoke built one that comes with the deluxe version of the sim. Looks good enough. So there's the 27s if we're expecting 27 center. Now where are we to the airport in relation to the city? There's the city. So we're going to come in over Lake Michigan, over the city, and then up this neck of the woods here. And that's our approach. All right, fairly straightforward. I say it's straightforward, it'll be anything but straightforward. Now let's go in and have a look at Navigraph charts because we need to do a bit of planation here. All right. So the airport, when we leave Cincinnati, let's just make sure there's no warnings or otherwise. We're going to be planning to blast off out of Concourse B. It's going to be a push, and we're going to go to runway 27, and out we go. If we have a look at our departure, which is an RNAV departure, after we clear the runway, which is going to be runway 27, we're going to climb in a heading of 276 degrees up to 1400 feet. Then we go direct to Bonlay. Then on track 360 to Macod. Then on track 047 to Hagal. So we're going to take off 27 to Bonley, which is over here. Then it's a right turn up to 360 up to Macod. Then a right turn to 040 up to Hagal. So we take off, we turn right and right again. Fair enough. Now, in terms of altitudes, top altitude here is going to be 5,000 feet. So climb via the SID, it's going to be 5,000 feet. Jets are 5,000 feet. And because it's runway 27, we can see the instruction here. The routing at Hagal, turbojets maintain 5,000, all other aircraft maintain 4,000, expect clearance to filed altitude within 10 minutes. All right. Now let's look at the overall flight plan. So there's our right turn. Plash FWA, which is the VOR or the VOR. And then we start coming in for our arrival. So we get as far as Senac. So let's have a look. We're going to be coming up the road from Fort Wayne VOR, which is then up to Watson. And from Watson, we continue on this way until we get to Senac. All right. Zith is here. Good to see you, buddy. Now, there's holds on the way if it's busy, right? So they could hold us at any of these positions onto these approach fixes. From Watson, on track 282 to Haupo, then on track 300 to Makita, then on track to Prize, then on track to Hulls, then on track to Style, then on track to Dweeb, and then Senac. Then on heading 270 or assigned by ATC, expect radar vectors to final approach. Okay, so we'll ramble up this way. We're coming up this way here. And then we're on the Watson arrival. And these are all the little headings that we need to do. All right. Now, in terms of an approach, well, let's go in and have a look at the approach. We're planning runway 27 center, right? So we have an ILS, or from Watson, ILS 27 center. From Watson 4. Oh, I see 27 center for an ILS. Let's have a look. Transition Vulgar or transition final? Well, where's Vulgar? That'll kind of work. Although it is supposed to be Senac. We can just do it this way. Let's go in and have a look at the ILS approach. So from Senac, we'll find our way over to Nichols or over to Crico or Crico, and then in. So we're going to be at 8,000 feet or 9,000 at Nichols, right? All right. So the ILS for 27, missed approach. We're going to climb to 1,100 Then as we climb right, turning at 4,000 on a heading of 290, over to the Chicago VOR on the radial 332 outbound to, is it Okun? And hold. Missed approach, 1100, swing up to the right, over to the VOR and hold. Okay. Let's have a look at that in the chart. Ah, there it is. It's miles out. Grand. So missed approach is fly, making a small right turn, and then it's out this way and hold. Fairly straightforward. Fairly straightforward. So CNAC is going to be kind of our last main spot, and then we get our link radar vectors, or we self-vector to get us in to the ILS approach. All right. I'm happy enough with that. Our missed approach, I'm happy enough with that as well. Right. So it's going to be up to the right-hand side, and it's a hold at Ukune. Ukune? Don't know how you pronounce that. Belbro, have a good one, buddy. All right. So let's revise all of this. We will depart out of Cincinnati at around 8:30 tonight. We're on the Walton... No, we're not. We're on the Haggle 5 departure, which is going to be a right turn and a right turn up to Plash. We fly on this all the way until we start the Watson 4 arrival. So from Watson, CNAC, and then we know from the ILS, somewhere between CNAC and our first approach fix, which is probably going to be Nichols, we're going to be up on 9,000 feet. So from 9,000 feet, then we start ascending, and then we get ourselves down nice and low at probably Jimbo. Jimbo is going to be at 4,000 feet. Driscoll is going to be down at, or Driscoll is going to be down at 2,200 feet, and then we're down. Let's have a look here. So ground speed not. Our glide slope is going to be 3 degrees. We do have ILS, so decision altitude and decision height. We're going to get our localizer. Reverse 50, 60, 1080 or 1060 without a van. Are we using a van? No, we're using a van. Right, never mind. That's at 2 miles. So the last one is going to be at 2 miles from the airport. 12 miles at Jimbo and 25 miles at Creco. All right. Missed approach is going to be fly until we get to 1,100 feet. Right turn up to 4,000 on a heading of 290. We head over to the Chicago VOR on the radial on the radial of 322, and then we hold. Okay. Now, what about the airport? What do we need to know about? So, if we're landing 2C or 27 center, we have scenic hold pad. Interesting. Cargo ramps. Then we have the North Apron. So this is fire station, the main tower. So it's the main terminal, and we're over on the North Port, on the near Charlie. Don't really worry. I'm not worried about that. We're going to be parking somewhere over here. Right, we're not going to be down here at the cargo ramps. We're going to be in one of these concourses here at the terminal. All right. Hey, Jammer, good to see you. Welcome in, buddy. All right, so to recap the flight, we're taking off tonight with an Airbus A320 in and around 8 o'clock. It's going to be cold. The wind is coming in from the west. We have the Haggle 5 departure out of runway 27. We're going to be climbing. What's our cruise altitude for tonight's flight? We're going to be at a cruise altitude of 36,000, or flight level 360. Cost index of 25. I might drop that to 34. We'll see. But yeah, it's fairly straightforward. The wind, we're going to be battling a headwind of about 60 knots. Cloud conditions at both our departure and arrival airports, but no sign of any precip, which is important. We're going to be planning then to do the arrival into O'Hare. We're going to be coming in over Lake Michigan, and it's going to be on the Watson 4 arrival. That's going to bring us up as far as CNAC. Then we'll get radar vectors onto the ILS, or we can self-vector the ILS, and our first approach fix is going to be Nichols. 9,000 feet, and then we start our 3-degree glide slope all the way down and watch our speed as we do it. Fair enough. I think we're okay. I think we're okay. From Volgar, Ornav 1 GPS is required. That's okay. Simultaneous approach authorized. That's okay. VGSI and ILS glide path are not coincident. The glide angle is going to be 3 degrees. Okay. Right, I'm happy enough. We can connect to VATSIM. We've seen the scenery. We know what the weather is doing. We know our routing. And we know our missed approach if things go wrong. The likelihood of the weather to change the runways, well, we've already looked at that on the weather forecast. Doesn't seem to be much of a change. So I'm relatively happy with what we're doing tonight. I'm also going to be using the flight panels from Flight Panels for our A320, or also the A3XX that they have. And do be sure to check out Flight Panels. They're fantastic, lads. They have they've Black Friday sales on at the moment, so make sure you check it out. But on the Stream Deck XL that I'll use later on, you can see all the buttons and stuff I can use with this Phoenix aircraft. There is a barrel load of stuff I can do, so I'm looking forward to using that later on this evening. So I think that's going to call it for today's part of the stream. We will be back to you in about 7.5 hours. I want to thank you all so very much for joining us. The first part, of course, we were checking out the Navigraph Academy, and I think it's been I think it's been incredible. Great start, and we'll continue on with that next Thursday, so make sure you're here. Set an L reminder in your phone, and yeah, until we go flying this evening at 2000 Zulu on VATSIM, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in, for all the support as well. These are absolutely nuts, and happy Thanksgiving Day. We'll see you later on when you're about to sit down to your turkey dinner, and we're going to do some flying in Microsoft Flight Sim. So until then, catch you later. Oh, we've got a gun sight. This is a beta, so I'm not too worried. It looks great though, doesn't it? Listen to this. Did you hear that bang? Did you? How do we fix this? Right, don't panic. Lorry red, lorry yellow. Oh no!
I've had enough of this wowdy, webble, sniggering behavior. Silence! Call yourselves Poitoian guards. You're not. Seize him! Seize him! Blow your noses and seize him! What did Spartacus say when a lion scoffed his wife? Nothing. He was Goldie Ada.
Think about it now, right? I'll sing it for you.